Hello, Javier. How's it going? I am setting up something called StreamYards right now. Mhm. So, nice BG. Oh, background. I think so. I try to set up a nice background. I've also got these like plum blossom, like cherry blossom things, which I might add as well, or like a pop of color. They're cute. They're like pink. Cool. I'm beautiful but look sad. Ugh, moments like that are so annoying. It's just missing one of those wall tapestries. I have some wall tapestries. 1K. Oh, on YouTube? Yeah, it's good. Mm-hmm. Okay. Oh boy. Mm. Okay. Gives me the feeling of an ancient Roman villa. Nice. I'm not quitting NSFW stuff. I want to use like Twitch streaming as a springboard for like more NSFW stuff. I read 100 Years of Solitude. I have not. Is that good? It's gonna be terrible. I can't leech off of Stephen Benelli's. I can't leech off of DGG right now because Stephen is streaming. Very sad. Tisk tisk. You're watching both of us? Oh my god. Thank you. Listen, the Dali Band, DGG, incredible. I love you guys. Plans for the future. I I want to do amaranth type stuff, but also politics. Oh yeah, I listened to the Econoboy debate and it was pretty good. Econoboy and I have been like talking a lot in DMs, and he's really chill. Hey, I enjoyed your talk with Destiny a few days ago. Interesting to see this MrGirl talk. He's got some pretty disagreeable takes, but also some interesting perspectives. I think the most interesting thing about MrGirl is his approach to speaking with people. And I've warmed on MrGirl because I think at first I found him sort of annoying and he came off as disingenuous to me. But as I've listened to him talk more, especially with people like Lauren Southern, I think that I've been more impressed with sort of the way he handles himself in conversations. I think he commands a lot of presence, which is impressive. I talked to him in DMs about doing a one-on-one, and he said maybe we need to, I'm like really busy this week, so we should talk next week. And I was like, cool. Why did you consider him disingenuous at first? There's just like a lot of behaviors that he sort of did that came off as like very strange to me. Um, so the one that like comes to mind is how he would say to Destiny, like, oh, I'm so like naive, right? I'm so um, new to this, and like, I'm scared of what streaming is going to be like. And I mean, it just like made me want to roll my eyes because usually if you're like aware of your naivete or, your like inability, I think that should like confer also some knowledge. It's this like Dunning-Kruger effect. And it seemed like very put on to like be afraid of that. I was just not buying that this is truly how he felt. And maybe it's not, but like I do think that other aspects of him are uh, are credible, are genuine. I also used to think that he would intentionally like make himself seem worse than he is in order to like, you know, generate drama, interest, and so on. And now I don't necessarily think that. I am talking to him later tonight. I didn't watch the Richard Spencer interview. Maybe, I don't know. I've heard it was boring. Richard Spencer's a peculiar figure. Am I from BC? No. I get so many people asking me, like, am I from this place or that place? And usually it's because, like, they've run into a catfish who is pretending to be me. Yep. Okay. Okay. One of the most fascinating interviews. Interesting. I thought he was like feigning ignorance. Yeah. Or at least playing up his like ignorance to destiny. It is a nice compliment that people were like um catfishing me, sort of. But it's also really fucking annoying. So I get so many DMs and it's like, no, it's not me. It's never me. You saw me on Stardust stream. Oh, cool. Stardust seems cool. I want to talk to her more as well. I'm glad you think I have a calm way of interacting with people. I had a bit of like a spicier debate with like some trans people, and that was fun, but I don't know. I don't know if it's really my style or something that I'm good at necessarily, but it just felt like the fun thing to do in the moment. Vosh. Um, Vosh called me cute on Twitter one time, like years ago, when Vosh had like, he must have had like 400 followers or something. And I like complimented a video that he did. But I've just moved like so much further right in my politics since then. And so politically, I don't agree with Vosh on so many things. And I actually think that like figures like Vosh are sort of dangerous, even if you do agree with them on like immediate short-term goals, because they will always try to like subvert and push the movement to the left. And I mean, Vosh will say as much, right? Like, Vosh is one of these people that views capitalism and our current economic mode of being as like wholly evil and therefore like deserving of abolition through any means necessary, which I think is so scary. Beware of utopians, or they justify anything. Did I see the Hassan trans debate? I didn't. What is this on trans debate? I could do some like media reviews as well. Because people have given me like a lot of things to review on stream. It was like an informal debate Hassan had with those infamous TikTokers. Oh, okay. Yeah, I mean, I think that like Vosh's understanding of a worker cooperative is like highly ideological. Um, like very rooted in his like communist thinking, but this like doesn't really make sense. Um, he's trying to merge like an understanding of market socialism or like co-op socialism with like a broader market system with his understanding of actual communism, and these things are like fundamentally incompatible. I was thinking about sorry, watching this like Jordan Peterson video on YouTube. He literally doesn't understand basic business finance. Vosh is an anti-communist. Is that true? Do you just mean that like from a communist perspective, you think he's like terrible? He thought the stock market was how individuals raise capital to start a business. Yeah, not typically. But I mean, yeah, like some individuals use the stock market to raise capital. Especially, I mean, especially in regards to like um private stock offerings. Centralized government. Interesting. I would think that Vash would not be a fan of centralized government control. Okay, turfs. That's an interesting topic. I want to go over it on stream sometime. But basically, I used to think that turfs were the kind of people who I could like really reason with. That if I just like sat them down and took a really empathetic approach, I could get them to like understand what I want and, take some like reasonable discussion with me. And I feel like as a trans woman, I'm the kind of person who's like very willing to cede quite a lot of ground to turfs in order to have like a good conversation. And which, I mean, you can criticize that strategy, but like it does typically work, especially growing up in like a very rural, like conservative area. It was effective to like cede ground to people, but then focus on what's really important, which is like, I think I should have the freedom to live my life in a way that is meaningful and important to me. And it's not, hurting you. And that's like what I would try to focus on with a turf. But I had a conversation in TikTok DMs with a turf. It lasted a while, just going back and forth. And she actually opened up to me. She talked about some of her traumatic experiences with trans people and with sexual assault. And I talked with her and I empathized and we went back and forth. And I said, wow, that's, thank you so much for sharing. And I really feel for you. And I recognize like how scary that situation must have been and so on. And then, it gets to a point in the conversation where I say, and what I really want from you is for you to be able to empathize with me and my perspective. And, she told me to like fuck off and that all trans women were like evil men who wanted to rape women. And then she blocked me. I was like, okay. So I don't know. I think a lot of turfs are just like, fundamentally bigoted in ways that makes them impossible to reach out to or connect with. I think the thing about J.K. Rowling is that J.K. Rowling really straddles this line between like acceptable and unacceptable, where if you look at the exact words that J.K. Rowling says, rarely is J.K. Rowling, I think, legitimately transphobic, right? I think most of the time when you actually look at the words she's using, they're fine, right? But then you look at like some of her actions, aligning herself with like virulent anti trans turfs and signal boosting them, or, tacitly sending support behind this negative and debunked idea about trans people or that. And I do think that J.K. Rowling probably is like quite transphobic. Even though a lot of her words are like pretty defensible, in my opinion, if you read them charitably. So unfortunately, I think she like sort of plays this like language game where she's like, this is my defensible opinion, but like she'll subtly sort of give credence like very transphobic positions. J.K. Rowling status. Let's look at this. Oh, hmm. I'm not going to agree with this, obviously, 'cause I don't believe that like trans women are men, but I do think this like speaks to, and I wish I could like actually look at this. If anyone knows a way to like get past the blocker, we'll like read through it. But I do think that progressives will do this like very Orwellian sort of language game where they just like redefine words in ways that are absurd. I mean, this is something that maybe I'll talk about on stream someday and go into greater depth with, but I do think there are legitimate arguments for saying that trans women are or are not women. Even if I think you can like fundamentally believe, or you can both hold the position that trans women aren't women, but also trans women should be allowed to transition, present female. We should treat them with the dignity of not like outing them by misgendering them and so on. So I think that's like two positions you can have, but that's very hard to do. And most people are incapable of having these two positions at one time. So for the most part, I think that saying that like trans women are women is kind of this thing where maybe it's true, but also maybe it's just a sort of convenient lie that we tell ourselves because it's an easy way to like communicate to people. I think that trans women should be treated with dignity and respect, which I certainly believe that trans women ought to be treated with dignity and respect. Is Prime moderating? No, it's like there's several people. I think there's 6 people on the panel. Not sure. I kind of what do you usually stream about? Politics? Although I want to do like more sexy streams, sort of. Would gender abolition eliminate the concept of trans? I think as trans is understood currently, yes. But I don't think it would abolish the internal biological reality within some people that their brain convinces them that they ought to be a different sex, right? That sort of biological mechanism is probably going to exist forever until we can, like, you know, eugenics it out of the population or something. Do you think it's possible to shift the consensus on the globe Earth narrative? Possible. People have believed all sorts of crazy things, so they could believe the world is flat. I'm not actually sure if it's genetic, but there's probably a genetic component. Like my understanding is that homosexuality also has a genetic component, but it's not wholly genetic. And I would not be surprised if being trans was quite similar. There are certain genes that are only expressed in certain environments, so it wouldn't surprise me if there is a situation like that that is happening with trans people. Politics have been a hobby of mine for a long time. So it's just like me streaming my hobby, basically. So there are twin studies, and what they find is that twins, if one twin is gay, the other one is more likely to be gay. And if one twin is straight, the other one is more likely to be straight if they, are identical twins. And so this indicates that there's a genetic component, but it's not 100%, indicating that it's not wholly genetic, or the genetic component is reliant on some sort of environmental factor to activate. This is the funny question. What was the first ideology that you fell into when you were a teen? I was a libertarian when I was like 13, 14. So I read Robert Nozick's Anarchy, State, and Utopia. You are a libertarian? Wow, I couldn't tell. I'm so shocked. I assume you're being sarcastic. Okay. MrGirl definitely makes broad generalizations based on anecdotes. And I did go to college. I have a degree in business. Oh, good for you. Rav, yes. Oh my god, it's Mr. Girl Returns. Is this the actual Mr. Girl Returns? Or is this it's the actual one? Amazing. Talking smack already. Oh yeah, we can talk about this. But I mean, I think from what I heard from you is that in conversations, you don't want to dig into the data necessarily in conversations. You'd rather have like a one on one conversation where you connect with each other's experiences, which I think is legitimate as long as you establish those sorts of rules um, before the conversation begins. And ironically, it's sort of something that I'm more comfortable with. I mean, it's easier in a way if I can meet your anecdotes with my anecdotes and maybe synthesize something. Yeah, I think that's good. To my credit, if I can brag about anything, I would say that I'm quite good at following like the rules of conversation. I don't have many skills in life, but I would say that's one of them. What's the point of data if you don't bring it up in conversations? Data has many uses, but it's not always the most useful in conversations, just because I can't fact check, right? Okay, cool. Thanks for stopping by. Incredible. I would personally say that I'm AGP. I would say that I'm an autogynophile. So I think the theory describes me accurately. I think the problem with the autogynophile theory and Blanchard's typology more broadly is that Blanchard will label people as like liars if they express a internal understanding of themselves that doesn't match up with what he thinks is accurate. And with something as nebulous as sort of gender identity and gender experience, that's, I think, very frustrating for a lot of trans people. AGB can also include bisexual trans women or trans women who exclusively date men, but for AGP reasons, i.e., like meta attraction. I have a rule. Do you know what auto means? It means self. I don't know if you're talking to other people in chat or me, but what do you think of gender topics being brought in an ideological way in schools? Do you think that's happening? Absolutely. Schools are indoctrination chambers for the left wing. It's insane. But what I was going to say about, I've taken a single class on gender studies. The absolute rule for interacting with trans women is that the longer you interact with a trans woman, the more likely she is to say something that indicates she's an autogynophile. That's my iron law of talking to trans women. It's true in basically every case. I heard you mention Quebec. J'imagine que tu agrandes la basse. I don't know what basse is. Embarrassingly. Low. Oh. I am not. I don't know if I want to say controversial opinions about Quebec. Um, I think it's really fucked up that like Canada requires its politicians to be bilingual. And I think that Canada has like Anglo Canada is like balanced against the francophones, but like it doesn't make any sense because French speakers in Canada are such a small minority. Autogynophilia is attraction to the idea of oneself as a woman. I need to put away this sharp thing because I'm gonna eat it if I'm not careful. I have this like oral fixation where I just like stick things in my mouth. Not good. Okay. We're gonna begin soon. Stretching. Feels so good. Yeah. The Quebecois, the most racist people on earth. That's not true. I love my Quebecer friends. Is this just going to be you and him and Prime moderating? I think there's going to be one other person. Streaming now, Reckless Media Rhetoric with MrGirl Returns, Taft-1, and Joe Lewis. I haven't argued with MrGirl yet. That's going to be in like 18 minutes. I think I've seen a little bit of Joe Lewis. He's like a progressive black dude, right? People are saying fuck Joe. Is Joe bad? I thought he was cool. Joe's insufferable. Well, he's not logical. Is he right wing or left wing? Hmm. A bit inconsiderate. Well, that's no good. I like considerate people. Left wing. Okay. That's not good for me. I think I might be the only right-wing person on the panel. You and MrGirl. Okay, maybe. We'll see. I think that I have probably opinions on this that are not orthodox to the left wing. Well, geez, I hope he doesn't derail either. Neither does MrGirl. What does neither MrGirl? What do you mean? How do you genuinely get so far into cognitive dissonance that you can be a trans woman and take autogynophilia seriously? Like, I keep getting recommended your stream by Twitch, and all I see are like 20-year-old outdated talking points that don't hold up any scrutiny. Autogynophilia accurately describes my experiences, and I think the experiences of most trans women that I've talked to. When I talk to most trans women, the longer I talk to them, the more likely it seems like they're going to tell me something that seems autogynophilic. So, for example, I'll talk to them, make friends with them, and then they'll say things like, oh, yeah, I'm aroused when I look at like pornography, which depicts like men transforming into women, right? I'm aroused by that idea of like becoming a woman. Isn't that hot to be a woman? And it's like, oh, okay. So you've like told me before that you don't believe in autogynophilia. And yet here you are, like literally textbook telling me that you're aroused by the process of transition. And I've had that happen in like multiple scenarios where I don't know. I don't want to like reveal the sexual preferences of all of my friends, but time after time, trans women will reveal to me that they have autogynophilia interests. And I would say that I do too. Like, that accurately describes much of my sexuality and how I interact with people sexually. I think the thing to understand about autogynophilia is that Blanchard doesn't think that being an autogynophile means you shouldn't transition or that you're not a legitimate trans woman. He believes that transition is still good and still appropriate for you. He just believes that one motivating factor in your transition is sexual arousal at an externalized object of attraction becoming internalized. And whether or not that's like 100%, which he doesn't believe it's 100% of the reason for people transitioning, but I think we can debate the percentage that it contributes to like people deciding to transition, but honest people should be able to agree that it does happen. Many trans women are autogynophiles, and for some of them, that's going to be a reason to transition. And anyone who's been in the trans community, I think, should be able to see that there's a lot of people who fit the bill for autogynophilia. You seem to put a lot of eggs into one basket with Blanchard's typology. Maybe. What do you mean? I would love MrGirl to join us in the Civ game. That would be so much fun. Isn't AGP separate and distinct from dysphoria? Yeah, as far as I understand it is. Um, Okay, who the fuck gets off to transformation? Boop. I don't know what social circles you run in. I mean, lots of people. It's a very popular fetish category. But it's also not the only category of pornography that indicates an autogynophilic underlying desire. So, I mean, there's like very many. But for example, if you're looking at pornography, which is like a picture of a woman and like a caption describing, that woman having sex, and you're imagining being that woman and that's arousing you, you're probably an autogynophile. So personally, I am partial to Blanchard's theories, but I also think they don't matter that much. Like, if you have autogynophilia, I mean, like, who cares? That's like, it's a sexual inclination like anything else, like any other random fetish. And, like, it doesn't make you like a better or worse person. Damn, being in a body that's you're more comfortable with in a sexual situation makes you aroused. Who would have thought? I mean, there you go. That's autogynophilia. Like, men are not aroused by simply being men. Neither are women, right? Just being a man is not arousing for like average people. But with trans men are aroused by this sometimes. So kind of seems like an indication that maybe the ideas have some merit. But also see that, like, FL, the longer we talked in this conversation, eventually it got to a point where you said that, like, you said something that is, like, plainly an autogynophilic thing. And it's like my iron law of trans women, which is that, like, the longer you talk to them, the more likely they are to say something that is autogynophilic. On the Minecraft server, I need to hop into the Minecraft server again. You can kill the Ender Dragon. Cis women do say AGB stuff sometimes too, though. That's correct. But cis women are also cis women, right? So if you give two people, one person who's assigned male at birth, one person who's assigned female at birth, and you ask them the same question, are you imagining yourself as a woman when you are imagining having sex? If the person who's assigned male at birth says yes, that's very unusual. Most people who are assigned male at birth do not say yes to that. If the assigned female at birth person says yes, then that's very usual, right? So in one case, it's unusual behavior. In the other case, it's not unusual behavior. So sometimes people will say that, like, oh, if you give AGP tests to cis women, they come back saying like they're AGP. And it's like, kind of, but like the questions on these tests are like, are questions that are not really in mind, that don't really understand like the perspective of the person taking the test. They're assuming that the person is assigned male at birth. But like autogynophilia. Okay. There's so much to respond to. MrGirl's trans takes rub me the wrong way. I don't understand how he can assume he knows someone else's internal experience. I agree. I think that's very strange. MrGirl is one of these people who talks a lot about empathy and connecting with people. So hopefully when we do talk, he will be able to extend that charitability to me and to listen to the things I have to say. Again, who would think that people would be more comfortable having sex in a body they feel comfortable? No, okay, so comfortable, yes. Aroused by the body, not necessarily. So that's the distinction. everyone's going to be more comfortable having sex as the gender they identify with, right? But whether or not they are aroused by being in the body itself of a specific gender, that's what indicates autogynophilia. So autogynophilia is not simply saying that you are comfortable as a certain gender or not a certain gender. Men are going to be more comfortable, engaging in sexual intercourse in a male body than in a female body, and vice versa for women. But if you're an autogynophile, not only will you be more comfortable engaging in sex as a woman, but you will also be aroused by being a woman in of itself. And so that's the distinction. Now, you also might be, if you're comfortable, you'll be more aroused by anything than if you're uncomfortable. So it is fair to say that, like, a woman who is engaging in sexual intercourse as a woman in a woman's body is likely going to be more aroused than if she were engaging in the same intercourse in a man's body, just because of like comfortability with her body, right? So autogynophilia is really about the object, the source of sexual arousal. And when the source of sexual arousal is yourself as a woman, that's autogynophilia. Simplor, do you say I'm perfect? You should buy my OnlyFans then. Porn preferences aren't simply indicating being aroused by being a woman just in general, but specifically by being a woman in a sexual situation. Yeah, so like you can consume pornography of women and not be an autogynophile. It would only be an indication of autogynophilia if you are consuming pornography of women and being aroused by the thought of being the woman, for the fact that you are being the woman, not because they're engaging in sexual intercourse necessarily. Autoandrophilia would be the inverse term. Samantha X Savage. Thank you. I feel like that name rings a bell. But maybe not. Oh, okay. That's it. From the Mask Off podcast. Thank you. Thank you for dropping in. I Googled your name and was like, wait, why does it sound so familiar? But I can't find like mentions of it. Okay, nice. Good to have a diversity of perspectives. But yeah, personally, I would say that I'm an autogynophile. Okay. Pretty close to the panel time. I can see myself on the panel, but I don't see anyone else. So We'll continue to wait. Most trans women prefer dating women. I'm not sure if that's true. Maybe. I think some of the data that I've seen is that it breaks down with like basically like even in all categories. So like about 33% of trans women identify as lesbian, 33 as straight, and 33 as bisexual. And it might be true that in that bisexual group, trans women tend to date other trans women. Do trans people act in that way more often because they aren't in the body they want? So while in the body they prefer just adds to the sexual arousal they already experienced. Maybe. Men are shit. I disagree. Men are great. I love men. I'm not dating a man though. I'm dating a woman. Oh my god, it's Meritocracy. I love you. But the title is what really brought you. Good. I hope it'll be a good stream. Oh, okay. Mm-hmm. Mm. Oh, 1 second. Um. Oh. Mm-hmm. Mm.
No, you don't remember me. Well, you may remember. I don't know. We done been in club.
They pulled him out.
Up.
Sup.
Hi, how's it going?
All
Pretty
right.
good.
Brilliant.
It was good.
Yeah. Oh, wait a minute. What are you doing here?
Yeah, that's want to sneak in.
That was my fault.
Slid past the gate.
Sorry. That's not his fault. He was just happened to be around chilling. I just pulled him in. That's my fault. All right, let's get cracking.
Cool. Are the rest of you in the stream yards? Or just me?
Yeah.
I'm there.
Yeah,
Okay.
just chill. I usually start my stream, talk to my channel first, and then get in. But No problem.
Nice.
Yeah, I'm a professional streamer. Don't worry.
Okay. Okay. All right. Let's try this. This. And let's do this.
Okay.
Up, up, up.
I think I look so
And pop.
pretty with like the
Okay.
lighting. Am I
Faces
close
are
to the
there.
camera?
We're only missing
Okay,
one
sorry.
individual.
I just felt happy.
So we'll wait for that person to show up.
Sweet. I will. Well,
I usually have something interesting to talk about. Can't think of anything today. What's going on? I don't know.
Right. Talk about. I guess you've never taken the time to apologize to me
What?
for denying that I am the biggest One Piece fan
oh my god.
ever. Right? I'm number
It's
one.
absolutely not true. It's physically impossible.
That's true.
Because I exist. That's what I'm saying.
All right, buddy. We're gonna have to settle this one day.
Super
we're gonna
stuffed right now. Sorry.
We absolutely should. Let's see. Who are you? Are you a Sanji guy? You look like
I'm
a Sanji
absolutely
guy.
a Sanji guy. I love Sanji.
I believe it.
Okay, I can't be associated with this one. Sorry.
Oh.
I'm a
Oh my
Frankie
God,
guy.
this
I'm an
is
American through and through.
Yeah. An American. Okay. Let's see. Let's hit up MrGirl. Make sure he knows to be in the. Yeah. Up into my Discord.
Okay. Professional streamer, guys.
Okay. Hopefully,
I'm
he'll
so
see that
good at
message.
this.
Let's see. Easy one. Anybody? I think I'm the only big movie person. Anybody seen any good movies lately? I'm always looking for the next thing. Oh, the freaking, my bad. I'll answer my own question. It's not a movie, but the Peacemaker show is really good. DC
I haven't
is
seen it yet.
competing. DC is coming back. It's really, really good.
I actually would like to check that one out. I definitely have not seen it. It looks like it could be pretty good. But I don't know. I like John Cena. Look, John Cena, he puts on a good show.
Yeah.
So hopefully
I watched The Expanse. Okay. I have not.
Well, that's
I actually can't watch that show.
Why is
Why
the
not?
stream?
I saw the opening
horizontally?
credits thing. They like
What
put
do
it
you
on
mean?
YouTube or something like a couple days before the show was set to come out, and it just seems like they're
with
like
black
all
people
dancing
and
and
white
shit,
people.
right?
Yeah, the intro is
Remember
really good.
Gross
very
songs?
not good. That's
Well,
bad.
I think it's just
No, it's
Seems like
hilarious.
super try hard weird shit. I don't know.
black people over white
It just
people.
it makes me feel like
Hell yeah.
it
We're
feels
gonna have
like
white
what
slaves soon.
the corporate overlords thought would be like cool and edgy or something.
No,
it just feels really gross.
No, I mean it's the intro is over the top, but that's like it is super intentional. But the show itself is pretty chill. It's basically, I don't know, it feels Deadpool-esque. I mean, well, I guess it feels like the Suicide Squad. It feels like
white
it's
slaves,
the
but it's
same
just
sort
race
of
play.
comedy that the movies use, which I think the movies
Deadpool-esque.
Yeah.
It's a good thing, I think.
Black lives matter.
Superhero movies shouldn't take themselves too seriously. I feel like
the frog will be here soon.
The frog.
Yeah, I'm
That's
just putting on my makeup. Give me 1 second.
Okay. To get your tiara on and everything.
But
Okay.
yeah, I can't think. I mean, yeah, that's really good. I'm trying to think of anything besides that.
I've just seen, in terms of movies, Spider-Man, and the Marvel movies is what I've gone out to. There's a whole bunch of old movies. Like I noticed on Hulu, like just before I came on here, that Parasite was there. I still haven't seen that movie.
Really?
The Korean film?
Yeah.
It's a great movie. It's really excellent.
I think it was over. I mean, don't get me wrong. It's really good, but it's also like it was. I think people still somehow figured out a way to overhype it Don't get me wrong,
Maybe.
it's an excellent movie, but like because it's an excellent movie, and I feel like people, I don't know, I was expecting it to be the greatest movie I've ever seen in my life, and I'm like, no, it was just really, really well
It's
made.
solid, yeah.
Yeah,
I think people are also eager to show like how worldly and cultured they are, being like, yeah, I watched an amazing Korean film, by the way.
yeah, it was subtitled. Like it's
Right.
like non-anime fans watching subtitles makes them feel better about themselves.
But yeah, I thought it was solid. I brought a guy to like see it on a date, and he like didn't like it at all, and I was like so crushed because I thought it was great. It was like my second time seeing it, and I was like, you got to see this, like it's so interesting. And he was like,
No, they
was
make,
it
yeah,
terrible?
I feel the same. A movie that made me that like gets, I've seen it like 4 times, and I feel like every time it's better is Mother with with the girl from Hunger Games. I can't even think of her name.
Yeah. Mother was good.
Mother
That was
is
good.
really good.
That
Yeah,
was
I actually
really
haven't
good.
seen that one.
Oh yeah, check it out.
it's a movie you have. It's a movie you almost have to watch twice, because the first time, like until you get close to it, like halfway through, you're not gonna get what it's about. And then once you get what it's about, you like, I need to see this again. Actually, now that I understand the concept. And
if you want a really good movie, you should watch like a Korean film. I Saw the Devil is really good. It'll teach you all about solving your problems with violence. It's a pretty good movie.
Okay.
I have not seen that.
All right,
No,
since
it's actually really
since everyone is actually already here, Diva, you ready? What's going on?
good. Yes, sir. Give me 1 second.
Okay. Yeah, I guess we'll get started. I'm used to like having to wait like fucking 30 minutes to get anything fucking done here. But, okay. So we'll get started now.
Cool.
Thank you all there at home for being here. This is the Small Council, which you have Saturdays at 9 p.m. Eastern, right? And we're actually starting on time. It's unfucking believable. But anyway, if you're watching this on YouTube, please like, comment, and subscribe. Consider becoming a YouTube member by hitting that join button, supporting the channel that way. It helps us out a ton. And consider jumping on one of our live showings, right? We got the links up here at the top, right? So stop by that Twitch link for when we do this live, and be a part of the Twitch chat here. We'd love to have you. Okay, I have a group of amazing guys. I'm very happy to have them. New faces, love to see it. So I'm going to introduce them, and we'll get started. All right, first we'll start with my man, MVP. We call him Joe Lewis. Joe Lewis, thanks for being around. How are you doing today, my friend?
Yeah, I'm doing well. This was the first Saturday in a while where I felt like I got some stuff done. So that was kind of nice. But yeah, for those who may not know who I am, I'm Joe Lewis. I cover educational politics on Twitch. And if that's something that might interest you and you're like the 1% of the 1% that finds that kind of interesting, you can find me at twitch.tv/Joe Lewis, the O being 0. And the same is on my Twitter. It's the same exact handles. But yeah, glad to be here. Hope everyone's doing well. And it's a good topic, so I'm kind of excited.
Hey, thanks so much. All right. Next we'll go to Black American Made. Look, right. I like having Black American Made on, right? I, as the number One Piece fan out there, right? I like, helping like my juniors, right? My lessers here. Like I got to bring you up to my level, right? So like when I come here, I give you an education, I school you, right? And it's for your own good. And so that's why I let you on my panels every time. How you doing?
I respect it. I want to be just like you when I grow up. that's the goal. Every day, a little bit at a time. But no, I'm doing really good. Yeah, like I get excited every time he has me up to do a panel. So I'm super excited to be here. I've a couple people, April and MrGirl, I've never haven't been acquainted with, so this is my first time seeing y'all. And yeah, it should be overall pretty fun. Y'all know my stuff. It's literally my name, Black American Made, on mostly YouTube, but also on Twitch. Follow me. Just do it.
Thank you. All right. Next we have MrGirl. Not new to the stream, but new to this particular show. MrGirl, thank you for coming back. Being here. You are taken off out there. Like I feel like everything you do is fire nowadays. How does that feel? I wouldn't know.
It feels good. I don't want to fuck it up, so I get nervous. I talked to Richard Spencer last night, so that was. I think I handled it well, but I was afraid I would. I was afraid I'd
Be a
screw
white
up
nationalist
your.
apologist.
Yeah, basically. I mean, I have like some Jew insurance, like on my face, but still, it would not be good to basically allow him to use me as like a mouthpiece for his views. Uh, he's very smart. He's very, very, very smart. So, yeah, I'm nervous. That's how I feel. I feel excited. I feel smug. I feel proud. I feel happy and I feel scared. I hate myself. I feel bad and I feel angry.
Okay. Well, the full gamut of emotions.
There's a lot going on. It's a very emotional time.
I bet it is. But Mr. Girl, I'm glad you stopped by, spent a little time with us. I don't think there's too much to be scared of here, especially since this is less of a like
I don't know.
super
My
debate.
chat's warning me about Joe Lewis.
Oh, well, man.
They've
They're doing
also
a good
warned
job.
me about Joe Lewis.
Yeah,
Apparently, you
they
have a
said
reputation.
they said he's a
You got
bad
nothing. You
faith
got nothing to worry
arguer.
about. As long as you're
They
not a
said
fence sitter or a right winger, you'll be fine.
They said that you're bad faith and that you're going to try to make me seem bad faith. So I
Okay.
don't know what to believe. I don't know who to believe.
We'll see in like 3 hours then. Yeah.
Because you're
I
black.
have to figure it out.
Okay. Well, that's it. Next, we have a brand new face, right? April, thank you for coming through. It was really nice. A mutual individual, a friend, put us in contact. I'm very happy they did. Right? You seemed like you're also making the rounds. People want to be talking to you, so I want to be talking to you because like I like bandwagons. So, April, how are you doing?
Doing great. I think that I'm in a similar position to MrGirl to a lesser extent. Destiny's community just likes me, so I leech off of him for viewers, and they're super nice. So I've just been dipping my toe a little bit into politics, having a good time, trying to represent, maybe dissident or strange, politics you don't see every day, and maybe learn something new, talk to people, listen to their ideas. So yeah, good stuff.
Well, thank you so much. I'm glad that you're having a good time, and I know that destiny orbiting lifestyle. I get that, man. It's real.
Yep.
Okay.
Now that he's back from his trip, I just know my viewers are gonna plummet.
You'll be fine, I'm sure. Everyone, please check out April. And last but absolutely not least, we have our Dark Lord and Savior. Yes, his name is Doobie. He's back with us once again. Doobie, one of my favorite people to talk to. Doobie, how are you feeling today?
I'm doing very well. Very excited to be here with lots of nice people. And yeah, I'm Doobie. Thanks for having me.
All right, let's get cracking.
Oh, wait, 1 second. All the people in Mr. Horse's chat or MrGirl's chat telling them to Mr. Horse, that's your name now. All those people telling him to mount me, right? That's not cool, okay? Like, that's kind of rapey, a little weird. And as you can see by my rock, I've got pretty good mounting strats. I don't know if you can do it. So you're asking to bite off a piece of something he can't handle. So just be careful.
Wow.
Okay, great. Moving on. The topic. In the world of social media, a lot of irresponsible communication occurs. This seems especially true when it comes to conservative media. Oftentimes, people who know better flirt with conspiracy theories like QAnon. This can be done for profit or simple acceptance, but the results are the same. It spreads a destructive ideology. Are we responsible for the harm and potential harm done to the world by the things we say? If some speech can be demonstrated to lead to bad outcomes, should we stifle someone's ability to speak it? Or is the fact that someone has the ability to speak the most important overriding concern? So, yeah, as you guys know, right, we live in a moment of conspiracy theories, of just like extremely destructive ideologies in general, right? Like far right ideologies that are spreading. Oh, and people who may not be a part of those, right, still like advertise those things. And I think that there is room for a discussion as to is it most important that they be able to simply speak, right? That their First Amendment rights are unimpeached, or that we take a second look at these things and say that some speech is just too dangerous. So we'll go around and we'll discuss. All right, so opening statements first. Start with my man, Joe Lewis.
Yeah, to address the question directly, are we responsible for the harm or potential harm done to the world by things we say? Yes. But I'm not really concerned about that because I think that's like the easier thing to approach. The more challenging thing, I think, is the second question that you posited. So I believe that we should try our best to alleviate the circumstances that lead to bad outcomes. And I also feel that all outcomes are possible, specifically with political speech. And I think that organizations and people are just trying to just utilize, maintain, and gain different types of power. And maybe we can have I have a definition for power, and maybe if we need to, we can like work out on that idea, because there's a lot of steps within that. And maybe we'll have some time to hash that out. But again, generally, I think that we should be prioritizing the circumstances that lead to bad outcomes as opposed to trying to overtly address bad outcomes. I think that, to make this a bit more direct, if people are kind of getting lost, is that I think that when you directly address bad outcomes and try to prevent bad outcomes, you're going to just inherently inhibit people's individual liberties and group autonomy. And I don't think it's going to help in the long term. So I think alleviating circumstances, excuse me, is something we should prioritize.
Thanks so much. Black American Made.
Yeah, I think that I have no idea everybody in here's political leanings necessarily, but like from a basic standpoint, we most people understand that free speech is in relation to like government, like specifically government impact, like the concept of being imprisoned. And I think I think the way we currently handle speech is probably pretty close to my version of ideal. I believe that internet spaces and websites should be disincentivized, like from a profit perspective, to allow like any type of any type of speech that's like demonstrably unpopular and harmful, and considered to the detriment of society. I think the best thing we can do is what Prime does is get people together and sort of push back against this type of speech, because I don't think there's a useful model we can look at of truly controlling or limiting people's speech, even the ones we consider super harmful. And like I said, the more particulars of that we can go into in the open.
MrGirl, please.
Well, I think that restricting speech is a bad outcome, so it doesn't make that much sense to me to do that to prevent other bad outcomes. So I have a couple like kind of lenses through which to view this. So one is a lot of the stuff we say is promoted by social media algorithms, and those algorithms promote things that feel good or feel bad, get people to click on them, and that's usually not the truth. So I think that's partly their fault. On an individual level, if you're saying things you know aren't true, probably shouldn't say them. So then that's like Joe Rogan is another lens where it's like he'll have people on and he'll entertain ideas where he doesn't seem to really know what he's talking about, but then he'll say, I kind of don't know what I'm talking about, so it's okay. But I think he ends up spreading a lot of misinformation that way. And then I guess you're asking, like, should we allow that? I don't know who you mean by we. If you mean social media companies, I think they're actively promoting misinformation, so they should stop. I don't think the government should step in, though, if that's what you're getting at. I think we got to have free speech. That's it.
Thanks so much. April.
Yeah, so I'm a fan of free speech, but I agree with sort of what MrGirl is talking about. I think these social media platforms, they're optimized to keep you clicking, keep you engaging over and over. They're not optimized to promote the speech that most benefits society. And so there's a sort of toxic, destructive effect in the kinds of speech that people pursue is oftentimes not the most truthful. So while I don't necessarily think we should regulate free speech or ban people from the platforms for, spreading, this position or that position necessarily, I think what we do need to do is make sure we're mandating like a neutral way for these ideas to be interacting with each other. So ideas should be put against one another. And we see that when we ban certain kinds of speech, what ends up happening is it goes somewhere like Telegram, and the community gets more concentrated and less receptive to outside influence or towards deprogramming from other more, compelling ideas. So what I think we need to do is we need to adequately platform these ideas, or platform bad ideas versus good ideas. And the way you do that is by putting them in a neutral environment where both can be expressed honestly against each other. And so my goal would not necessarily be ending free speech or banning ideas necessarily, but really trying to create that like neutral environment where the goal is not necessarily keeping people clicking, but optimizing for truth. So that's my position.
Thank you. Doobie.
So I think I don't know. So I'm very like in favor of free speech that allows it where in such that it means like you can discuss ideas, right? Because I think it's extremely important to get people to discuss the reasons they believe the things that they think they believe.
Right.
Right.
That's you say you need it.
Well, okay. However, right. I think that I think there's a line, right? And I'm not really sure where that line is. I was on a panel, one of your panels, Prime, the other day, with this ANCAP dude, right, who said that he would allow people to like intentionally, knowingly, like spread misinformation, right, about COVID and COVID vaccines. And he thinks that there is no line, basically. And if people want to say it, they should be able to say it, no matter the consequence to everybody else. And even if we can demonstrate that their speech, their expressions of whatever are leading to like demonstrable like harm in the real world and leading to people dying and shit. Well, even still, people want to say this thing, and that's like some divine right that they have. So we just can't stop it. I don't think that's realistic. I don't think that's like reasonable. So I think there is a line somewhere. Though I'm very sympathetic to all the arguments about letting people discuss their ideas, and and if you try to shut people down, they kind of get into like echo chambers where they just kind of harden against all the opposing opinions, and it's much more difficult to reach them. So I'm very sympathetic to those arguments, but I don't think the line is just like not there. I think there is a line somewhere, and I think that once we find the line, we do need to enforce it.
Open to the panel.
I don't know, because I'm like super small as a content creator. Like, how powerful are the algorithms that we always discuss when we come to this? Like,
Extremely.
Incredibly powerful.
They're your audience. Your audience is not people. For the most part, your audience is a robot, and then the robot decides if the robot takes a sample of what some people think of you and analyzes their behavior, and then decides how many more people it wants to show you to. But yeah, so like your core audience is like the kindling, and the robot is like pours the gasoline on it.
Right. I mean, like modern social media cannot survive without an algorithmic way of doing it.
I don't know. The reason I ask is, I guess that's the answer to that question. I think the next part of that is, it seems that I don't know, that like there is a lot of misinformation out there, especially when we deal with like our media. Absolutely. But I feel like part of that is the media being representative of, like, I think it's like a circular wave. Like, real people do believe the things that we're seeing in terms of like our media, and the media is probably exasperating that and creating more
Wait,
people.
doesn't your Twitter profile say something about like a 9/11 conspiracy theory?
It's my Twitter profile is the first the opening scene to a show called Boondocks. It's it If you haven't seen the show, you don't hadn't get it, but if you have seen the show, you do get it.
I don't get it.
But yeah, it's not like an actual conspiracy theory.
Oh, so you don't think that Bush did 9/11 or anything?
No, it's all part of the show.
It's a black
Okay,
thing. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, basically.
Well, maybe you guys can teach me.
I think that
Something
the
that you-
interesting question is in regards to speech that is like, wholly destructive. I think we can agree that, like, if you are an objective observer, you could observe that some speech is objectively negative and degrades the conversation for all sides. So speech that is just like blatant misinformation, I think degrades the conversation for all sides. But it's one thing to acknowledge that in a perfect world, we could identify that kind of speech. And another thing to acknowledge that in the real world, the kind of fact checkers that we often have as a neutral arbiter are not so neutral. And a lot of times we see, like, in the case of like Snopes, they tend to lean a little bit left. And so when it comes down to something that is a little bit borderline, like maybe it's slightly true, maybe it's slightly untrue, these sorts of like fact checkers, if they have a liberal bias, are going to slightly lean towards benefiting the progressive side. And so I think anytime we start introducing like quote unquote neutral arbiters that are going to limit or regulate speech, we have to be very careful about making sure that they're actually neutral. And I might even go so far to say that, like, without enormous effort, these neutral arbiters are probably not going to be so neutral, and they're going to cause some sort of like degenerative effects in the conversation themselves. So the question then, I think, is if we accept that humans are imperfect and that neutral arbiters are very hard to do without a great deal of experience or resources, is it then better to accept the world where there's some misinformation, but maybe we temper the way that people have conversations, or make sure that there's some other checks and balances between people spreading information, or the world where we are blocking information, and maybe blocking that information is leaning slightly to one partisan side or another?
I believe this responsibility, I put a lot of the responsibility to the education system. I don't think we do a good job as educators teaching students and guiding students through the differences of misinformation and disinformation, because there is a difference between the two. And then because of this lack of exposure to how to navigate these things, propaganda then in turn becomes very powerful, not only to like push political power or just push social power. And with that being said, I think that's like where you got to start. Like there has to be a much more conscious and dedicated effort in exposing students to the differences between misinformation and disinformation. Really exploring what critical thinking actually is. Not only expressing like how do we debunk information, like revealing false and inaccurate information what people say, but also how do we amend those things? So how do we change information for the intent for it to be more accurate and clear? Because while we can say not every single individual is intentionally spewing disinformation, because I think disinformation has a clear intention, like explicitly intended to mislead, but there's very clearly misinformation, like people who, in the quest of understanding more about phenomena, just get some things that aren't necessarily there, and that's totally fine, and we encourage that. But by and large, when we have those pieces of inaccurate information in the quest of finding out more, we don't really do a good job in explaining to people like, okay, like there's misinformation in what you're saying. Here's like some ways to approach that. Here are ways you can ask better questions when you're searching for things, better ways of doing research. That way, hopefully, you can get to a better understanding to the phenomena that you're trying to identify. And then again, if we're talking in a political context, like, it's all just going to be used for propaganda at the end of the day. But if it's going to be used as propaganda at the end of the day, then we should be very, very not only keen to, but sensitive to misinformation and disinformation and being able to sniff it out when appropriate.
Maybe.
Yeah. So I think okay. I don't want to be this direct this early, but I'm going to do it. So
Do it.
what I'm kind of curious about is like so it seems like, Joe, you're acknowledging that people have some kind of responsibility for the things they say and the damage that it could do to the world. So I can agree with that. But and misinformation is an easy one. But what about things that like encourage or perpetuate like racial animus toward other like racial groups? For example, the other day when you were on a panel with somebody and out of nowhere called him a white boy, just for no fucking reason.
Ooh.
Right? It had nothing to do with the argument, nothing to do with anything he was saying, but you felt the need to call him a white boy anyway, and on a public stream with hundreds of people watching.
See, thank you, Doobie. This is what my chat was warning me about. Okay.
Sure, I can address
So, like,
that directly.
do you feel like you have a responsibility for like the racial animus or that could perpetuate?
Of course.
So what should be the consequence for you for doing
the
something
consequence?
like
So in my consequence, I lost 3 of my mods in that conversation. In that consequence, because I am a public figure and my name is my handle, people contacted my school about that. 2 individuals actually. So I had a meeting with my administration about that. And when I say my administration, I mean my principal, my assistant principal, talked to me directly about that. They're discerned that there's no action moving forward, but to make it very, very clear when I am on stream, that there's a clear difference between who I am as a private individual and who I am when I'm talking about things publicly.
Okay.
I mean, that sounds fair.
Would you? Yeah, that sounds fair. Go ahead,
Wait,
Mr.
is that what is your stance on having done that? Do you regret that?
Of course. Calling people white in conversations is do anything to push forward the things that I advocate for and what I want to actually talk about. Like as much as I'm frustrated at the again, like I'm a Black American, right? So while I do have frustrations with the system that be, and I'm also very frustrated at the sort of slow pace that specifically white Americans have when it comes to understanding not only the issues that Black Americans have, but how their particular privileges and their role in these institutions have, that gives me no right in my frustration to racially identify people in a way that leads to them feeling ashamed of themselves for being white, them feeling, I guess you would say, hesitant in even having conversations with me. And it doesn't give me the right, I just like, that's not productive, right? And as much as
you want to shame white people on a mass scale, but not individually.
That's not what I said. I didn't say.
Kind of. You said you're frustrated with the pace.
I feel like the consequences didn't fit the crime.
So like, and
yeah, I don't know if I'd agree with like going to your like work and shit like that. That seems like a little far.
The mod thing felt fair.
Yeah, so like for me to like,
I don't think they should go to your work. I don't think they should go to your work either.
Address what Mr. Girl's point was previously, and then the rest of that.
Yeah, like to put it on the pen, and we can kind of move the ball forward. In that, like, I'm frustrated at certain individuals on this platform, but that doesn't give me any right to be antagonistic to them, especially based on their immutable characteristics. That's inconsistent with equity. And it's inconsistent with what I actually stand for. And it doesn't matter how frustrated I am, like I am still a public individual that has my name literally as my handle. So the way I handle myself is incredibly important. And I lost sight of that.
But that's self-interest. I'm talking about responsibility you have to the audience.
Can you repeat the question one more time, like to the full totality of it?
Doobie asked you about racial animus, and I'm pointing out that in your explanation, you're saying you shouldn't have lashed out at one person, but you're also saying, I'm frustrated with the speed at which white people are understanding the way they participate in society, basically.
No, not directly. My frustration is not how they participate in society. People can participate how they want.
The speed with which they are able to, the speed with which they are gaining an understanding or something.
I can elaborate on that a bit. Like, my frustration comes in that as I'm fighting for the root cause of making sure that students are given the opportunities to be successful in school, the only people that I see in my personal navigation who are going directly against these things have been white Americans predominantly. And what ends up happening, especially in my position, I'm one of 6 Black teachers in my entire district. So when you are trying to fight for something, specifically not only for Black students, but for students of color, trans students, all students of marginalized groups, and then you see a very firm and very aggressive opposition of things that even myself and my other white colleagues argue does not exist within school curriculum, it gets very frustrating. And while the members of marginalized groups, especially within my district, are fighting to make sure that, hey, you know, things like critical race theory are not taught in our school. These books that you believe are pornographic or bring about the idea of promiscuity when it comes to sex, that's just one minute portion of what a book is trying to encapsulate. But then you still get people yelling at school board meetings. You still get people writing letters to administration saying that they want to burn books. So the point that I'm trying to make here is that over the past 5 to 6 years, it gets very frustrating when navigating that. Now, again, there's different ways that I can navigate with that. But I think the most important thing that I have to do moving forward is not, no matter how frustrated I am, to not antagonize people like that, because it's not acceptable. It's not acceptable behavior. And I have real world consequences.
I still think, well, you mean for yourself?
No, it's not only for myself.
Bad for the white people who heard you say that?
No, I don't think you're really understanding what I'm saying. Is that
I am understanding what you're saying. I'm disagreeing with what you're saying.
That's fine, but I have a responsibility not only for myself, but for everyone else around me. Because when I am navigating, I'm not only representing myself.
To white viewers to hear you say that.
Of course.
Okay.
I don't think I would go that far. I mean, you're allowed to feel that, and it's not like from some equitability of like, oh, you know, like hearing whiteys doesn't affect white people. It's like, I just think in general, there is like, I feel like harmful requires like just a higher threshold to me. I think it can be seen as maybe rude. It can be seen as
animus.
distasteful.
It is animus,
but I don't know. I feel like the content. I feel like this is voluntarily bought into content. Like this isn't something that. I don't know. I just think the threshold should be higher.
What we want without harm. My point is that Doobie brought up racial animus. I feel like the things you're saying, even right now, you're airing out some kind of racial animus, and I'm not.
Can you
elaborate
on that a little bit? Like I'm
yeah,
not
you're basically
really
saying I work
with
a bunch of stupid white people and they suck and they piss me off.
No, I don't work with a bunch of stupid white people. I have fantastic colleagues that are not only white but of all demographics. I don't know what you're.
Okay.
I don't know what you're trying to get at.
So you're saying okay? Well, you're frustrated with the white people yelling at the school board meetings. White.
I'm frustrated.
Like white parents.
I'm frustrated with people in opposition towards marginalized groups when it comes to the goal. When it comes to the goal.
Yeah, I don't
trying to make sure that students
yelling at somebody for being white. I feel like it's the same.
I don't know why.
But his disagreement was political. It wasn't racial. Like it was rooted in the.
My disagreement, to Ban's point, like my agreement is specifically political. It has nothing to do with race.
It has nothing to do with race.
There's actually a segment of Black people who think that like critical race theory is some like huge thing being taught in elementary school too. It's really a point of like political ignorance. He's having an issue with like you're making it a black-white issue.
No. You started out saying I yelled at this guy that he was I called him a white boy.
Yes.
And then you're like, instead of doing that, I should give context for why I'm frustrated. And then you said I'm frustrated.
No, I should not give context to why I'm frustrated. I should stay within the bounds of the conversation being discussed. And I should stay in the boundaries of the conversation as it is discussed. And even in my frustration, there's nothing productive in calling somebody a white boy if I'm frustrated at their arguments about something.
That's fine. You just said you're frustrated with white people.
I don't know how
that's
you
not
heard that.
exactly.
I mean,
It's
I
fine.
don't
This
know
is
how you heard
circling.
that.
I think we're
we
circling,
can,
but
yeah, we gotta table this because we're gonna be
We're
stuck
not
on.
circling. You're
But,
just
but that
No,
is
there's-
kind of what you said.
I
though.
do
white
think this
people,
gets
now
like an
now you're saying
interesting
you didn't say
question. And that question
Sure,
is like, who is ultimately responsible for creating consequences for harmful speech, right? Because in Joe Lewis's case, it was individuals who brought consequences, who, he lost mods and people like talked to people that were close to him, right? So that's like individuals creating consequences. Do you think it's the responsibility of platforms ever to create consequences for speech, or maybe even the government? So I think we can like sort of focus the question there, like who is responsible? Should platforms create consequences for certain types of speech? Should governments, or should it be left up to the individuals? I think that would be really interesting to get everyone's views on that.
I think there's a responsible way to air out racial grievances, but I don't think the way you're doing it is responsible.
Have you watched any of my content at all?
This is a debate panel. I don't have to watch your content to respond
Well,
to what you just said.
you're making a claim.
Have you listened to my rap album?
No.
Then you can't respond to anything I say until you've heard my entire rap album and memorized.
That's disingenuous to.
Don't you think
but
you're saying he is irresponsible? Yeah, like with that, I'm saying what is the
navigate in a particular?
Like I have to watch your content to think what you just said is responsible. I don't think that. I think what you just said is irresponsible. I don't think you should be doxxed or attacked at work or anything. I don't think you should be banned. But I do think that, to Doobie's point, you are airing out racial animus and racial grievances, and possibly in a way that emboldens other people to spread or feel those feelings. I think there is a way to air out your frustration with a race of people, if that's what you want.
I don't think there. Again, I want to kind of remove the racial point.
I don't think the way you're doing it is responsible.
So
it's political.
Let's remove race from this conversation, because it seems like we're getting caught in that.
I
right?
think that's
like
impossible to do because one,
that's the issue. That's the issue. That's the point. If you think it's impossible that people
can I just
who have different political positions are like, I don't know. It's weird that you're saying everyone who hold on a second. Just hold on. I think it's weird that he's making like you're saying that everyone who holds this political position must obviously be white. Like this is some dog whistle for white people. When like saying that he has an issue with people who are
I'm frustrated with white people.
No, he specifically said multiple times, and maybe this is you not hearing correctly. He specifically said,
when I post this on YouTube, I'm gonna post you saying that and then him saying white people. I'm gonna go back and forth and back and forth and back and forth.
That'll be great. Then do that then. But let me finish what I'm saying. Do that, and I'll be owned, and it'll be great. But he specifically said, according to my ears and maybe the rest of the chat's ears, people who had an issue with critical race, the concept of critical race theory being taught in school. And you said, so you mean white people, right? And he said, no.
He said, I'm frustrated with the speed that white people are able to like acknowledge or understand their role in society.
Sure, but when you question him about that, he redirected what he was saying.
Yes,
that's what I'm
talking about. And so this is so typical of anyone who blurts out like a racial epithet or slur. And then you say, okay, so now we have to talk about how do you feel about white people? And they say, well, or whatever group that they attacked, and they say, well, it's complicated. I'm just frustrated. And you're like, oh, you're frustrated with them? And then you say, well, no, I'm not frustrated with them. I'm frustrated with people who don't like critical race theory and people who want to burn books that have sex on them or whatever.
Yeah, I think you can clarify things.
It's not a clarification. It's an obfuscation.
I
believe that if you blurt out a racial slur, or if you blurt out a racial attack, that I believe that you do harbor anger or animus towards that race of people. And if, when questioned about it, you have some long, convoluted explanation, you're just hiding it.
I think that do you deal with human beings who speak colloquially? Like, do have generalizations? Like, I do. Like, I don't know. I think there's people say like, "Oh my goodness, women get on my nerves," and then like, so there's not a single woman on this planet that you like, and then it's like, well, no, actually, more particular, and you speak on some particular thing. And
okay, I can be racist against black people, but still like some black people. That doesn't mean that you don't like any of them. And if you can be misogynistic but still like some women, that's not fair.
Yeah, but I'm saying that if some people use speech like more colloquially, like I don't think you can take
Overgeneralized.
everything literal.
Overgeneralized,
Yeah,
you're saying.
overgeneralized. Yeah.
You're saying that when Joe Lewis called that person a white boy, Joe Lewis does not harbor any resentment for white people.
No,
Lewis
Joe, I apologize. I'm not talking about that. I'm saying whenever he made the generalization of white people and you asked for clarification on what he meant there, and then he went more specific. But you just
It's
seemed
not
like you
more
didn't accept that clarification.
It's different. Saying
You consider his clarification obfuscating. That's what you said, correct?
yeah, it's not a clarification, and whether it's true or not, it's not more specific. He didn't say white people who are anti-CRT. He said people who are anti-CRT, and then you gave him a lifeline by saying that could even include black people, and he was like,
It does.
Yeah.
That's not a lifeline. It's like, is that true?
That's not a more specific group. That's a different group.
Okay, then.
So
the propaganda. This is actually good to tie back into what we're saying, because the propaganda within these opposition groups is the same, right? And like, if I talk about propaganda as information being used to promote a particular political cause or perspective, there's a very clear political cause and perspective within the propaganda that exists in counter narrative to diversity, equity, inclusion initiatives, culturally responsive teaching, and culturally responsive training. The problem here is with that information and with this counter information, there's still, I would argue, disinformation. So false and inaccurate information explicitly designed to mislead people. For example, one of the things that's posited in an overwhelming majority of the anti-CRT bills that are getting pushed in the United States are all these ideas in terms of white animus and white anxiety. And by and large, most people who are in support of diversity, equity, and inclusion and in support of culturally responsive teaching and training, they don't approach that because that's part of what they advocate for within that nobody should feel any type of animosity because of their immutable characteristics, specifically and especially skin tone. But then what happens is you get one part of the phenomena, I should say, correct. But then when it comes to the additional information, they start positing things like they start misrepresenting a singular lesson plan or a singular instance in a classroom and say that like this is because of diversity, equity, and inclusion. This is because of culturally responsive teaching. But by and large, for a lot of these diversity and equity initiatives, a lot of the reports, and again, like when I'm saying reports, there are directors and different types of administration who do analysis of the diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives, and then make different types of analysis of the circumstances that are going on within the school. And one of the things that's shown time and time again is that particularly equity initiatives are not at a system-wide level. So what happens is you do get these individual instances of teachers doing culturally irresponsible teaching, like the one math teacher who did that weird like indigenous chant thing in the middle of math class. When like if you had a proper not only reinforcement but consistent not only I want to say education, but it is professional development on equity and how you can apply it within your teaching, then you won't have situations where teachers will think that that's okay. But people in opposition of what they're going to call CRT, but I understand it as diversity, equity, and inclusion and culturally responsive teaching, you're never going to get to that point where it's like, well, actually, within the school system, there was no diversity, equity, and inclusion officer. There was no equity officer. This is just a teacher functioning on their own accord. But that information is counter to what they're trying to push. They're trying to push that because of these things, this is happening. When in reality, sometimes in a lot of these schools, they don't have the resources to even have culturally responsive teaching in their professional development, unless it's maybe one singular class, maybe like 30 minutes out of.
I think the problem, Joe Lewis, is that like even if ostensibly in diversity, equity, and inclusion practices, it says that no one should be alienated, the actual result is that people are alienated. And that's most often white people who, with good reason can see that like when these affirmative action policies are put in place, like SAT scores, being white has like no benefit, but like being Asian is actually going to decrease your chance of getting in college, even if you've got like a good SAT score. or language that like frames white people as colonizers. It's all good,
Sure.
well and good to say that like, well, people shouldn't feel alienated because that's what the system is. But like fundamentally, these belief systems are the kind of belief systems that pit different racial groups as classes. You know, you read some of this old CRT literature, things by like Kimberly Crenshaw, and it's talking about Black people and white people as classes of people. And that kind of viewing of race, where white people have a class interest to oppress Black people, is the kind of thing that's going to make people feel alienated. And it doesn't matter if like ostensibly that's not the goal, because that's what happens.
Do you think there's a difference between descriptive and prescriptive language?
April, real quick, can you hear me? Like, check 1, 2. Do I need to turn my mic up?
I can hear you. Yeah, I just had to,
perfect.
you know,
Yeah, you
didn't
got a
want
point.
you
I just wanna
to interrupt my
Sure, I didn't.
conversation.
Yeah, I was okay. Yeah, so I want to make it clear. So you can hear me, right?
hmm
Great, absolutely fantastic.
Can you hear me?
So one of the yes, I can.
Okay, good. So
one of
you
the
started
things-
talking when I was speaking, anyways.
Correct. We can move past that. So one of the things that I found interesting in your statement is that even within your qualms and frustrations, it felt like there was conflation between affirmative action versus CRT versus equity initiatives. And those three things are separate from each other, especially when they're applied in public schools.
Kind of.
So I guess my question for you is, what exactly is your issue with equity initiatives in particular?
Oh, okay. So personally, I have a very big problem with equity initiatives in school, for example. And the reason is I think that policy should never take as one of its meaningful factors like skin color, right? Okay, let me elaborate. Basically, I think people should be chosen for their skills, not for their skin color. And I think as soon as you start eroding the meritocracy that we have in schools, that's a very dangerous road for society as a whole, but especially these institutions, which are premised on an understanding of meritocracy.
I think that colorblind, like overall, like even though
I want to before you do that, I do want to get that answer. Are you against affirmative action, April?
Oh yeah, for sure, definitely.
Okay. I mean,
yeah.
I can see that. So I guess the question is, within your quest of moving to like a meritocracy framework, what do you do with students with IEPs and different types of special accommodations? Do you think that schools ought not to do that?
IEPs? What do you mean? I'm sorry.
Individual education programs.
Oh, okay. So can you give an example of that?
Sure. Let's say you have a learning deficit that has an ADP, like me, which is an APD, excuse me, which is an auditory processing disorder.
Black is not a learning deficit.
Yeah, I'm not.
Having an auditory processing disorder is a learning deficit.
Yes,
so
but being
one
Black
of the
is not. So,
who was I'm pretty sure Joe's addressing a different point right now.
Obviously fine with affirmative action for people who have disabilities. That's not.
He didn't say that. That's weird that you would assume.
Yeah, I didn't say that.
Because it's fucking obvious. Okay,
but I mean, I do think that accommodations should be made for anyone who has a learning disability.
She's against affirmative action. We all know what that means. I don't understand. Why do you have to ask her specifically if she's against affirmative action for like blind and deaf people? Like,
I'm not talking about affirmative action for. Again, we're getting things kind of complicated, and like I don't know where to start to tackle it
at all.
Sure. So let me try this a different way, April. Do you believe that schools should ensure the fair treatment, equality of opportunity, and equality of access to information and resources in schools?
Absolutely. And the key word here is equality. Everyone should have access to the same resources.
So the thing that confuses me is definitionally how my district defines equity. So what within that, if you do have an issue with equity, like what's your problem within that you have concerns for?
Yeah, so my problem is that when the criteria for entering someone into a program becomes anything other than their actual capability to do the work, we are eroding the meritocracy. And so it's not good to set as one of your reasons for including people or not including people skin color, right? Everyone should be given a chance based on their ability. And I think when we look at like schooling, a good policy would be to provide scholarships to any intelligent student who can prove need. And if you do that, it's going to disproportionately benefit Black kids. That's awesome, right? Because we want every kid who's intelligent and capable of really succeeding in college to have the opportunity to do so. We want that. And that kind of policy is great. What's not a good policy is to set a quota and say, we need to have this proportional representation of these skin colors. Because the end result of that is you're going to be searching for BIPOC candidates to put into your program, even if they're not going to be totally qualified.
I think that's a great argument, but do you guys not know the counter arguments to affirmative action? I feel like we all should already know all of the points on both sides here. Like I feel like we can just like, okay, Doobie, what?
So just a quick totally unrelated thing. While you guys were arguing with each other, my girlfriend came into the room, leaned over as if she was going to kiss me, and then tried to force chewed chicken into my mouth like a bird. And
That's
I feel
assault.
more violated than I've ever felt in my entire life.
You're just
It
raped.
was absolutely okay. But back on topic. I feel like we've kind of gone off the rails here because what we were meant to be talking about is what Joe said and the consequences. Now, where we can talk about affirmative action and all that kind of stuff. I feel like that's a huge rabbit hole that we can get into if you guys really, really want to. But
I don't
what's
think we
more
need to.
interesting
Don't we
to
all
me,
know everybody's positions on affirmative action? Like it's all very obvious.
But what's more interesting to
We're not
me
talking
is
to just each other.
if so Joe has expressed that he thinks this is a bad thing to do, right? When he did that, and the reason it was so like relevant to me is I think that either the day before or the day after I was on here with Prime, and we spoke to this guy Mio who's like a white nationalist dude, right? And the kind of stuff that Joe did, right? This kind of like casual racism toward a white person on a public platform, totally, I guess, accepted apparently within the group, and that was kind of how something that he used to fuel his argument. Like, hey, it's okay to be racist to white
I
people.
think I'm going
these
to
days. White people are going to be oppressed. Little
Brittany
Timmy's going to be
on the Little
called white
Timmy
boy, and he's
question
going to be treated like shit for being white, and yada
Sunday.
yada, right?
Next
And
Sunday.
Joe was doing that thing right on this platform, right? And Joe, so I acknowledge that you said it was a bad thing to do, and I don't agree with people going after your job or anything like that. I think that's really fucked up. But I wonder if you can commit here to not doing that sort of thing again, not essentializing somebody or going after somebody with some kind of like racial insult, bringing up the race for some reason.
Of course, my commitment moving forward to make sure it's very, very clear is that I want better outcomes for students in public schools. And I want to
That's
have
not what he's talking about.
better...
Stop it. Stop. You have to
I'm trying to say the full encapsulation of what I want to do moving forward.
Can you not?
And if you
can
have
say the non-full encapsulation?
But you didn't ask the question. Just let him answer the question. Then he wants to be answered.
He's not going to answer it. He's not going to answer it. I don't want.
Then I'll call him out if he doesn't. But just let him answer it.
Okay. So let's rewind then. Let's rewind then. Doobie, can you answer your question again?
Or could you ask a question?
So given that we know that that what you did is kind of a negative thing that the white nationalists use to fuel their white nationalism and to pull other people into white nationalism, right?
And it's wrong on its own.
And it's wrong on its own, right?
We promise not to be mean
unless it's funny. And it's okay, I'm joking. And it's wrong on its own. Right? Can you commit here to not doing that again, right? To not attacking somebody for the race or bringing up the race when it's totally irrelevant to the conversation?
Yes.
Can I ask a question?
Can I elaborate on my goal now?
Yes.
Elaborate your goal. I do have a question that's based on this, but like kind of moves this in a slightly different direction.
Sure. So what I try to do in my space is prioritize educational politics. And with that is going to come different types of difficult conversations on how we can do better by students. Very clearly, and it seems to be MrGirl's frustration, and you seem to have this frustration too, that I have an anti-white bias, which I'll admit that I do.
No, no,
And
no,
I would
no.
argue,
No,
and I'll
that's not
go
my
as far as say,
frustration. I'm
can I
okay
finish?
with it.
May I
Hold
finish
on,
my
yeah, yeah, let me
may I
finish. Come
finish
on.
my point?
Please,
Okay, sure, but you're
And
misrepresenting me.
Joe Lewis.
that's fine. We can move on from here because we're probably at the table moving forward. That being said, I need to make sure that the content that I put out publicly and what I want to do is consistent with that goal. And going after people based on their immutable characteristics is not that. So that's all I got from that.
Okay. This idea of going after someone's job, right? I think you've all since agreed that that was uncalled for in Joe's situation. But at the same time, we see this when a Karen strikes, right? We see people cheer for exactly that. What's the difference between these situations? If you've ever cheered for a Karen, then why not here as well? Not that I want Joe. Joe's a fantastic human being. I want him to keep his job. He's a great teacher. So put that out there. Like that's my base right there. But I don't know what the difference is here. If you think this is actually, I think, a racial animus, I'm less convinced of that myself right here. But if you believe that is the case, then why isn't this called for?
I mean, I guess you'll have to speak to other people, but I've never thought the concept of like going after a private citizen's like workplace when their work is also like a private sector type thing. I don't know. That's always been really cringe to me. Now, the only time I never really cheer for it because I gain nothing from someone else being harmed. Like I don't even believe in like a punitive justice model in like just generally, but like maybe if you are like in a place of like public speaking, like if not even a Joe Rogan, like a Tucker Carlson or something, and someone like holding you accountable for what you do in that official capacity, then that's probably more appropriate. But yeah, I never cheer for people going for the Karens. That's cringy to me.
Yeah, I don't. The idea that every black person who has racial animus towards white people just shouldn't have a job is a very weird idea. Like that would definitely make things worse for black people and for everybody in general. Like that's not a good plan, and it will just increase racial animus anyway. So to me that makes no sense. I don't get the idea of like if somebody said something bad that they shouldn't have their current job, like should they never have another job? Like I don't think that makes sense.
It's
So,
absurd. And the best way
just
to like fix that is to talk with them and like empathize and try
Yeah,
to
exactly.
have a
okay. So,
conversation.
are you sure that's true across the board? There was just an incident that happened in New York, I think. Right? I don't know sports, but I think these were Knicks fans. I don't know. And they were on a train, and they saw like it seemed like a mixed race family, from what my understanding is. They were telling them like, get the hell out of here. You don't belong in our country. Like they're trying to take it over. One guy threw his beer at them, right? And they lost their jobs at, I believe it was like a Toyota dealership or something like that. And so like they assaulted.
I understand from a money perspective, like the way Toyota is like, I don't want you to work here because you're just hurting business. That makes sense. But I'm just saying from a justice perspective, I don't like. There's not really a reason why a racist person or a violent person or a crazy person can't work at like Toyota unless they're doing.
Or at
Is that true?
McDonald's.
Is that true? Well, first of all, absolutely. There's a reason why they can't work at McDonald's because they're working in food service.
Okay.
What do
maybe
they
so.
do to the food of people who they don't like, right? Like you don't know. So that's one thing, right? Moving on, there is when it comes to teaching. Okay, so again, I'm not talking about my man Joe.
That's
My
a fair
man Joe is
point.
actually
McDonald's
quite
was a
amazing.
bad
But
example.
um,
I just meant to
there
bring
was
up like
this woman in
a
Florida,
shitty low tier job.
and she had a lot
Doesn't
of racial
involve
animus. She was
interaction
white.
with people.
And she apparently had a like a podcast, like a Nazi podcast. She was telling about like how she's like a kindergarten teacher, and she actively discourages black children, like 5-year-olds, right, like black and brown children, right, to make them feel worse about themselves, and then like tries to encourage the white students as any chance to get, right. Should a person like that not lose their job?
Well, I think that's in direct relationship with their like job. I think they're failing
Yeah.
at the
Hold on,
job.
but do you think any white nationalists, whether they admit it or not, like would not do something similar? She just simply stated exactly what she was doing. But if there was a someone who is has displayed extreme racial animus, right? Do you think they would not still do the exact same thing as a
I
black
think that
person, right? Going through the education system, I've experienced racist teachers, right? Lots of black individuals who talk to them, right? They experience straight up racist teachers. So those people have had their
but I
jobs.
don't understand why
It,
do you think that a white teacher who blurts out something equivalent to what Joe Lewis said should teach black kids?
So no,
Why are you
What?
giving why are you
So
giving
he
him
would have to.
I'm
why
moving things on. I'm
Yeah.
trying to move
Yeah,
it
I know, but
along
you're
away
moving
from
things on
that.
because Joe Lewis is black. But if he were white,
No,
I
no,
don't
no,
know
no,
that
no,
you
no,
would.
no,
I
no,
feel
no,
like
no,
we
no,
addressed
no,
it.
no,
I
no,
think
no,
it was.
no,
Prime,
no,
prime,
Mr.
prime,
Girl,
You're
Mr.
right.
Girl.
I do
That's
think
not what I'm
prime,
saying,
I
Mr.
think
Girl.
that
prime,
Mr. Girl,
I
prime.
think
hold on,
that is
hold
what
on,
you
hold
are
on, hold on,
doing.
Mr. Girl. That's not what I'm
Yeah,
saying. I'm
I think
moving
it
it
is what
along
you're
to a
doing.
more extreme example. Not that I'm like hiding from Joe Lewis's point. I'm talking about like if you're saying
It's
that
not more
no one should
extreme. You
ever,
said no. You said that. You said that.
if no one,
I don't think it's more
hold
extreme.
on. If no one should ever lose their job
Yeah,
under any circumstances, I'm trying to test that. What is your limits here?
No,
I didn't
oh,
say no one should lose their job under any circumstances.
Okay.
But you're the example you just gave of a white teacher being more encouraging to white students. If I were the principal at Joe's school and I heard about this, I would probably want to talk to him too. I wouldn't try to fire him, but I would be like, how are you managing your obvious racial animus towards white people? How are you managing that in the classroom? Is this coming out in your work? How are
I
we
think
going
that's
to
a
deal
really
with it?
fair. I think it's a really fair
Because
question because I can agree that if it you just actually clued me into this, right? Because if it had been a white dude saying calling someone black boy on here, I wouldn't want them teaching at a school, right? To children, to black children, because I'd assume, I somewhat justifiably that they're not going to be treating these
mm,
children very well. So I think that's a really interesting thing to bring up, Mr. Girl.
I don't know.
well,
I think this is a super reach, and to the problem, I'm
I
not
don't
saying
think
no one
so.
should ever be fired, but there is a substantial difference between saying something like I'm not against public shaming. I'm not against you do something bad, like publicly people see you in a negative light and don't want to be associated with you. But I think the concept of like actively seeking out someone's workplace, like to cause them like financial and physical harm, like I think that's the dangerous part. If your business is like if something blows up and your job happens to find out and it's like negative publicity against them and they don't feel comfortable having you in that position, that's a different thing. That's not saying that like people shouldn't be fired. I just think that the idea of like this social media jester's response to people you think are doing harm of like let's call their job, let's take their children, let's ruin their life. I think that kind of is cringy.
I think the key word here is extreme racial animus because I think a lot of people have some sort of racial animus. And like, I talk to people like my girlfriend, she's Mexican, and she, I think, has like some racial animus towards white people based just on like her experiences. And she knows there's like a heuristic in her brain where if someone's going to be racist to her, it's probably going to be a white person. But do I think that like precludes her from, ever being in a job because she has like some racial animus? No, probably not. Um, and I think the difference is like the extreme versus like mild. And I think what like Joe Lewis said, saying like white boy, frankly, that doesn't seem like extreme racial animus to me. And I think it's a little bit different than like calling someone black boy, because like that is a charged term. And like calling black people like boy is something that you see like with racists. So
I think they're both pretty charged terms. Like,
but like one is
I think
obviously
it's
much more
becoming
charged because
increasingly
it has a
charged.
different
well, one has like
history.
more history behind it, right? But they're
Yeah,
still
but
racially
we're
charged,
creating the history for white boy being offensive
right?
now.
April, I
I have a
wanna.
couple. I have a couple observations I want to make real quick. One, I think liberals have a problem where they're like everyone is racist. We all have to own our racism. But if you reveal your racism to anyone for any reason, you lose your job and you're publicly shamed. I think if we really believe as April said, that most people have some kind of racial animus, then I don't think you should be punished too much for revealing it. I think it should be more about how are you going to manage it in your life, and how are you going to still do a good job at your job, even if you carry that view. And then the other thing is, I think most racial animus is defensive. Most racist people feel that they are being, like you said about your girlfriend, feel like they're under attack from the race that they are racist towards, including white people. And so, yeah.
I feel like you're just saying words right now. That felt very.
April,
Well, I don't think white people are the most racist race.
April, you brought up something that I kind of want to address.
Please.
You mentioned that your partner was Mexican. You said I
Yeah, she's
totally
like
missed that.
mestizo.
Gotcha. And you said that you believe that, or maybe you said she expressed it. I didn't catch either or, that she has certain responses towards white people in her life. And you mentioned like her past experience with white people.
Mm-hmm.
Got it. So what do you believe to be a way to alleviate the circumstances that would lead to her having those type of animosities towards white people?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's an interesting question because, like, a lot of white people get very frustrated when they interact with people of color who are maybe not like the warmest to them. And I think this especially happens like with racial discussions, where if I'm talking about race and I have like more conservative views, I think it's like a normal heuristic for people to recognize that if a Black person has like more conservative views, they're less likely to be actively racist than a white person who's expressing sort of conservative views and is maybe like hiding their power level. So I think this like sort of cautiousness is pretty legitimate. But the best thing that you can do in that situation is really try to hold open a space of empathy for why someone might have those feelings or that frustration or that mild animus. And then also try to really go the extra mile to make them feel comfortable. So like, you know, if I were to just meet my girlfriend like on the street and we were to have a conversation about race, I think the appropriate response for me, even though like it's extra effort, is to just hold open like extra space and understanding for why she might be uncomfortable and try to meet her where she's at.
Okay. And then I guess as a follow-up to that question, because that was a good perspective. Thank you for that. What are ways that you believe a Mexican student could feel what you're describing specifically within the education system? What are some ways that you think a school district could do something like that?
Like
in terms of
hold
holding
open
space,
space?
in terms of
Okay.
accommodation, stuff like that.
I'm not sure. I think you would probably have a much better answer on this than I would. But maybe like you'll say something and I can key off of it. What do you think is like a good way to hold space for this kind of anxiety?
Well, I think everything that you described. The reason why I asked you the question in particular is because something that tends to happen, especially with those who are looking towards meritocracy, especially within public schools, is that when we start talking about accommodations and holding space for people of marginalized groups, in this case, we're talking about a Mexican student, there tends to be a conflict in interest within keeping sort of meritocracy, like I guess you would say meritocracy frameworks, but also keeping space for those types of individuals, whether it be Mexican or otherwise. For example, I guess one thing that I think school districts should try to do is to ask the question, are we approaching our hiring in a way that is actually reflective of our student body? And this has nothing to do with affirmative action, by the way. And that's a totally separate thing. I want to make sure this is clear. And that there's a difference between saying that we need, say, 15% of our student population, our teacher population to be Mexican, versus within our district, there are, we'll say, our district makes up, we'll say, 47%, we'll say Mexican for this example. And does that 47% feel represented not only within the student body, but also within the administration body as well?
I feel like advocating for race quotas and hiring is the exact opposite way to deal with like racial animus.
Yeah.
And I agree. It's not a race quota. I'm
I mean,
talking
that's
specifically about.
part of it.
I'm talking. No, I can elaborate for sure. It's like, are we asking the question?
But either way, I feel like we're deep down that rabbit hole I mentioned earlier again, right?
Yeah, I cannot understand what you're saying.
Right, I'm talking to April specifically about this.
I mean, if I can respond a little bit.
Yeah, unless we want to move on from that.
Well,
I can't follow.
I mean, you're reminding me of something interesting, right? And it's this tension between holding space for ideas and, you know, putting all ideas on equal footing versus holding people to like higher standards. So there's this term that I've heard thrown around called epistemological equity. Epistemology is just the study of truth. And how do we come to believe and justify our beliefs? And equity, like we've talked about, is this idea that like all things need to be raised to an equal playing field. But the fundamental reality is that there are some epistemological worldviews that are less effective in a university setting. So if you adopt the epistemological worldview of scientific rationalism, of hypothesis and questioning your data and trying to like disprove your initial biases, that's something that's going to really benefit you. Versus the epistemological, I'll get to you in 1 second. Yeah.
Well, I just want to, so I totally understand every single word coming out of your mouth right now. I understand every concept, everything, right? But for the people in chat, right, the simple folk,
I don't know what the fuck you guys are talking about.
Can you maybe like bring it down out of the ivory tower a little bit and down to the common man's perspective?
People.
Okay.
And
That's
maybe,
fancy words.
Thank you.
You're right. I do tend to speak in incredibly pretentious ways.
This is why they should ban philosophy. Yeah.
What I basically mean is that like sometimes belief systems are worse than other belief systems, okay? And you should hold space for people to feel included, but you shouldn't hold so much space. You enable belief systems that are negative and detrimental to society. So people should feel welcome, but if someone requires that everyone buy into their into their worldview in order to feel welcome, then that's going to be a step too far. So I think there's like a tension here and we can find it.
I think this is something that's really easy to say, but it's a way harder to implement. Like that's obviously true. Like if I if we were just saying things, I would say that like only good ideas should be had as part of society. But like how do we define that? How do we implement it? Like to me that if we can't implement it, it feels close to useless. Now, I'm not saying what you're saying is useless because I generally agree with it, but I don't think we would ever be able to socially define and like hold accountable what we consider to be the right types of ideas.
I mean, I think the key thing here is that as long as we agree that not all ideas are equal and that everyone should just be like included to the point where it's destructive, I think we're on the same page, right? Where inclusion is not like the only metric, but also we want to progress society in other ways. So
that's why I started with like being socially unpopular, even though like I understand the like the larger implications of like saying that like the right position can be like socially unpopular. There's a lot of things that are probably good for society. They're right now socially unpopular, but it seems to be all we have is something so demonstrably like if something is like economically harmful that these especially like relating to like COVID or a lot of these other things going on, like businesses are saying that like this type of negative speech, even though they can't necessarily control all of it, a lot of it is being like blocked and censored, and that's what like conservatives have an issue with right now. And I feel like it's probably the most useful way of doing things.
I'm gonna freak out. I'm in the fucking Twilight Zone. We're not talking about the topic. This is not about the question, right?
Well, I was addressing what you said because I haven't been able to address anything else.
You're way down that rabbit hole too, where everybody's using $10 words for
I don't think I said
but
any
we're not even
$10
talking. They're not
like,
even.
Yeah,
We're not
yeah.
even talking about the topic
Yeah.
that we're supposed to be
I'd like
talking
to.
about.
I'd like to
I
address
agree.
Uncle directly.
I was talking about
Hold on,
censorship.
hold on,
I
I
would have
got.
brought it back.
I do want to move on. I do want to move on because we have been
Thank
drifting. I've
God.
been trying to.
Prime.
Yeah,
Oh,
let's
God.
please move on. Let's
For the
go ahead.
love
All right, Doobie, give it a try.
I have so Mr. Girl. This is for
Yes.
you.
Yes, dear.
So I have something similar to what I have for Joe for you.
Okay.
So you were on, I think you were on Wiki Supreme stream. Or it might have been on Lauren Southern's. One of those two, right? And I was watching, and it might have been Wiki Supreme actually.
What
It
did I
was the one
say?
where you said that you would rather watch the world burn than not say what you want to say, right? Something to that effect.
Yeah.
And that seemed, and because of what you were talking about at the time was the potential that you normalizing conversations about child attraction, right? Not molesting children, to be clear, but just that sometimes some adults are going to find some young girls attractive, right?
Really?
And kind of, yeah. I mean, if you weren't trying to, if you weren't suggesting that, correct me, but that's what I got from it, right? So that we should normalize that conversation, right? And talk about what I think you said that it was natural, right, for some guys to look at some young girls and just to feel attracted to them, right?
I believe that
even
I
if it's
said that.
even
It
if
sounds
it's
like
an immoral
something
thing,
I might say.
right? For them to act
Sure.
on those intentions.
Obviously, there would be a moral tact on it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I've watched like a bunch of your YouTube content, and I found a video that was, I think, from earlier this. I'm sorry, I guess mid last year. It was about like a monster you've been running from or fighting your whole life, right?
Yeah.
And then you kind of went into your background a little bit, and you talked about your stepmother, and about how you felt like you had to like tiptoe around everything you said, because everything you said was kind of used against you and weaponized in some way, because it seems like she was some like hyper SJW type, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and then you talked about
She's a man-hating lesbian.
Yeah. So I think one of the things you used was like you said that muscles were gross, and then she like came into your room and was like, oh, you guys know that muscles are like
So
the
my
guy said
brother
the
and I
muscles taste like
we were-
vaginas and shit.
We made a joke about how we were eating like a large amount of smoked mussels, in oil, on crackers, and we were joking about how like gross it was to eat like an entire container of mussels, but we like couldn't stop because they were really good. And then my stepmother followed me up to my room. I was probably like 13, and yelled at me because she was like, that people compare muscles to vaginas, so you're saying muscles are gross because you think vaginas are gross. And I was like, I've never heard this. I don't know what you're talking about. I don't want to talk about vaginas with you. I was not trying to talk about vaginas. Like, you're crazy, super oversensitive and insane. Yes, that was the story. Continue.
Is this still closer to the topic?
And then
I'm
I'll get there.
He's gonna
Be
bring it
patient.
home. It's Doobie, okay? Yeah.
Okay, I always get home. Okay, don't worry about it. So then you started talking about some of the stuff you used to do in school, right? You used to like write like articles or little newsletters.
Yeah, I had a news. I would
right?
hand out
And
my
they're very
newsletters
edgy,
once,
funny,
Very edgy.
extremely funny for your age. Actually, for anyone's age, they're very funny. Like the one about the pedophile principal, really funny work.
Thank you.
But you started talking about how you'd get in trouble for that, right? And you getting in trouble for that, right? When you knew, where you felt like a lot of people in the school actually agreed with you, a lot of the teachers agreed with you, right? Even though other teachers were coming to you as if it was like some outlandish thing you were saying, a lot of them actually agreed with you, but they weren't saying it because they were like they were worried about the mob, right? This monster that would come after them if they said the wrong thing, right?
Yes. There was a letter that was circulated saying I was racist and anti-Semitic and homophobic. And I think 50 teachers signed it. And I complained to one of my teachers like that. I was like, I can't believe this is happening. And she was like, well, think of it this way. 100 teachers didn't sign it. I was like, well, that's not that, like, thanks for going to bat for me. Yeah, you didn't sign the letter saying I was racist. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. And what I think what you were talking about was the monster was the fear, that the fear of other people's disapproval, basically, right? So you say the wrong thing, and other people are gonna disapprove, and they're gonna shame you, and nobody else is gonna speak out for you because they don't want to get shamed too, even if it's a majority opinion, right?
Yeah.
And I wonder how much of that perspective, right? This idea that because when I first heard you say that thing about letting the world burn, rather than like not saying the thing you want to say, it sounded extremely irresponsible to me, right? Given the topic, right? And I wonder like how, and I still think that perspective, when you're talking about that issue, is irresponsible. I think you probably should look into whether or not normalizing that kind of attraction, or at least discussion about that kind of attraction, could lead to like child molestation.
That's
I
not
think
okay. Can I push
Yeah,
back
go
on
for
that
it.
very briefly? I'm not saying we should normalize an attraction to children. I'm saying we should normalize talking about things about ourselves or each other that are bad. So, for example, in this conversation, would be normalizing talking about racial animus, saying, being able to openly admit, yeah, I kind of hate white people, or I have problems with black people, or like April's girlfriend, I'm mistrustful of white people. Those feelings, I don't think talking about them normalizes them, and I don't think it even helps them spread. It might help make them safer. And so it would be the same thing with being attracted to children or teenagers or whatever. Any sexual feeling that you're having, I think if you can talk about it with yourself or with your loved ones or friends or a therapist or whoever, it gives you a better chance at loving yourself and at kind of controlling it and knowing like, how's this going to work in my life?
Yeah.
Okay, so it's more like so if we're talking about monsters, it would be like this thing is the monster in the back of everybody's mind, and they're just not talking about it, so it's allowed to fester and build, and it comes out sometimes, and then we hide it away again. We pretend it's not there. It's like it's that sort of thing, right? So you want us to acknowledge that this thing exists inside of us sometimes, or at least in some of us. That we should acknowledge that and work together to like get rid of it or to deal with it.
Yeah.
Is that
But
what
to
it is?
kind of steel man what you're saying, I think the movie Cuties would be a good example of something that actually could create more sexual feelings towards children just by making it and distributing it.
Right.
More than just a conversation would, like art or like a book like Lolita. Like if you're writing about sexual attraction to children in a way that's kind of salacious, then I think you get more to the question of, do I want to burn Lolita, or am I going to prioritize free speech while knowing that I might be making the world a worse place, even for children?
And where do you
Is that
come
what you're
down on
getting at?
that? What do you think is what you prioritize?
I prioritize free speech. I come down on it right where the Constitution comes down on it. I don't think you should make child porn, and I don't think you should be able to watch child porn, but I think you should be able to write a book about whatever you want. And I think you should be able to draw whatever you want or think about whatever you want
What do
and
you
offend
think the
about whatever you want.
distinction
Without
is there?
consequence?
Is it just like the actual
Without
children being hurt?
Wait, sorry, April.
What is the distinction between producing child porn or writing it or, drawing it?
Well,
Is it
child
just like
porn
the
involves
child?
you have to hurt a child to
Okay,
make child
yeah.
porn. But if you're writing it, no, I think you should. With writing, absolutely, you should be able to write whatever you want. I mean, as whatever fucked up shit you want to express, you should be able to write it. But you are putting those thoughts out there, and then somebody might read it and be like, "Oh, this just turns me on," and maybe it's not just awakening something. Maybe it really is putting a new idea or new feeling into that
Right.
person.
I don't. I'm about to say, without even going more
if,
specific into this, like, do you think that? Do you mean when you say do whatever you want? Do you mean without social consequences?
I'd like to push back
Like
on
so,
that,
or I
but
don't even like
No,
consequences,
no,
repercussions.
I don't think anybody's
it's a
talking like
debate
social
panel,
consequences.
so
Yeah.
it's not
Okay,
a
so yeah,
one-on-one.
without legal consequences for sure. In my ideal world, if I am writing like super graphic erotica involving minors, and then I'm also like a little league coach, would there be no social repercussions? I like if they find out about. I would want basically the same thing that happened to Joe. Like basically, I think you should talk to the person and find out how if this is affecting your work, and then if it is, then they can't do that work. I think if somebody I would draw the line if somebody's like literally a pedophile and they're like, I am in love with children and I want to marry a child and they should be able to consent and blah blah blah. That person probably shouldn't work with children.
I don't know.
For
I
sure.
think that people have some
If
level,
someone's
like
in the
I think
puberty
even people
phase,
who do good speech have like have an understanding of like the repercussions of what they do. Even if you're like even like black radicals, like the Black Panther, like when people take these steps to step into things that are considered controversial, like
yeah,
or in activists, like in activist field, like I feel like there's some level of knowing what you're getting into. I think those consequences shouldn't, like I said, I don't think people should come for your job or like try to attack your family or anything like that. But I think socially, if you want to make if you're going to make a stance as a part of society, good or bad, like
yeah.
you have to be ready for the social repercussions.
Yeah, I
that
don't
come
think.
with
Yeah,
it.
but I think we all kind of understand that. But I'm wondering. So the reason this kind of stuck out to me is because I've had that argument with people 1,000 times, right? About what I allow in my community, right? I allow people to make lots of really scary arguments, right? um, and I wonder, like, but on that topic specifically, for me, that's like there's a line there, right? That I've drawn a box around this topic, and if I feel like it can normalize this thing, I'm not interested in having the debate, right? Um,
We
but
don't
I
have
wonder,
that.
like,
So in my Discord, you're not allowed to sexualize children, but
right,
that's because it will get the Discord deleted,
right, yeah,
not because I don't think you should be allowed to talk about it. It's just that it's like a business, and it's like the Discord's like it's like my restaurant that I own. I'm like you can't talk about it in my restaurant. You can talk about it in the fucking parking lot, but like I don't. Yeah. Then when I say sexualized children, I mean don't like we've had like pedophiles come in who want to talk about pedophilia or want to do like an AMA or something like that, and that's like if you keep it super clinical and vague, fine. But as soon as you start getting into details, no.
I know Doobie kind of started it. Is this who you want to be? Like, and I'm not, and I'm saying no like personal positions about you, but like, do you want to be the pedo guy? Is that like the thing that? Because I know you didn't
wait,
necessarily
no, I
bring
don't
up the
think that's
topic.
fair to. I don't think it's fair to ask even. I don't think
Well, no,
anybody. I
but
don't think anything
I'm
he's done
saying,
is like.
but that's I'm not saying it in a negative sense. I'm saying does he want that to be his niche? Does he does he want all of his in-depth discussions to be surrounded around that topic? Like I'm not gonna say if that's good or bad. I'm just saying is that something that is like, yeah, this is what I want to be known for? Because people do have niches.
Wait, are you asking me? Or are you
No, I'm
asking?
asking Mr. Girl because it seems like every
No.
topic around you comes to that.
It always comes back to that. No, I want to be the empathy guy.
Okay, I don't know.
And
It was
that
just weird. I was
includes
wondering how we got here, and I was like, this is. It was like,
well,
does he?
Doobie made me do it.
Yeah,
But
Doobie
I
did
did
do
make
it.
I'm the
Don't do
empathy
it,
guy,
Doobie.
and
Okay, let's talk about other stuff.
we empathize with pedophiles the least, and so that's
Right.
part of why I think I keep coming back to it.
Okay.
Yeah. So just to kind of expand this, to, like what I was getting at. So for me, like I said, there's like a box around that topic, right? Where I'm not interested in engaging in arguments
Yeah.
with people, even like steel manning them, where I feel like it could lead to like child molestation, shit like that, but it doesn't seem like there is for you, and I wonder like I wonder like how far that goes. So like if they're like I think like up to 5% of the men in the United States are pedophiles, right? According to like whatever fucking studies they have to come up with that number. So there's millions of people in this country, millions of guys specifically who are pedophiles. So if a writer did want to like start making erotica, like literotica, right, for pedophiles, they could probably find a market and make a good living doing that, right? Specifically writing
they
books that
do.
like sexual.
They have and they do.
Yeah, and but you wouldn't say that's something that should be banned, or you would say allow them to do it because it's like.
Absolutely. Yeah, because you have to draw a line somewhere. You're never going to
Yeah.
perfectly be able to draw a line that gives us all the freedom we want and all the safety we need. And so you have to decide, do you want to err on the side of being safe, which means shutting down some ideas and some speech and some self-expression, or and some of those things which may not even be harmful at all, or do you want to err on the other side of, you be you, you express yourself, you make your art, you make your writing, do whatever you want, and we're going to clean up the mess after. And I firmly believe that to be America, and part of why we are the way we are, and when I say that, I mean the good things about America, is because we err on the side of freedom.
But
Okay,
again,
so
I feel
you're
like
being
that
more like
begins and
the
ends at the free speech. I mean, that begins and ends at the government. Like we past that, there's all types of ways where we limit people, and that I think that's the more interesting conversation. The constitutional.
Well, I think he's asking more on a philosophical level, like, do I personally? So I'm aligning it with the
yeah.
First Amendment
Even
because
so,
I
if
love the
something
First
can be
Amendment
demonstrated to
to
do
harm
harm,
people.
right? Would you still allow it just because you so firmly believe in this principle? And I think your answer is yes. Yeah.
Well,
Yes.
no, I mean, clearly there is a
Yes,
line,
my
right?
answer is
And he
yes.
illustrated that line earlier when he said that, like, the production of porn involving minors, like,
Yeah, but
causes
he's just
harm
talking
to the
about the ideas.
minors.
He's saying, would I, knowing it's going to cause other people to do bad things, to commit crimes and break laws, do I have some kind of responsibility for putting those ideas in their heads or normalizing them somehow, intentionally or not intentionally? I would say no. I think we need to keep speech and art as unburdened by the moral consequences as we can. At the same time, I think a lot about the moral consequences of my speech, and so it's really important to me that I don't cause harm in that way. But if you're asking me to choose, obviously I want to have my cake and eat it too. But if I had to choose between freedom and whatever the fucking other thing is, I would choose freedom.
But I mean, we've established there's a line, and the line seems to be the production of harm or the creation of harm in the production of that speech. But I'm not exactly sure the moral distinction between speech that directly causes the exact same consequences as a result of being put out in the world versus speech that causes the same consequences but in its production. It seems like the same thing is happening where the speech is being put out and the same negative harm is occurring. And so clearly in one case, you think it's negative and the speech shouldn't be allowed. But in another, where it causes the exact same thing, you think it should be allowed.
Yeah.
Okay. I think it's a hard
because I ultimately don't
ethical
think it's the
position to take.
responsibility. Well, I think that's nonsense. I think that it's not the responsibility of you speaking about your ideas or making a fictional. It's like the difference between saying making a YouTube video where I like blow up a grocery store with a pipe bomb versus making a YouTube video, a fictional short film where somebody does that and then somebody copies me and does it in real life. Like, I don't think I bear the same responsibility
I
in both
agree,
situations.
but I think that has to do with your knowledge. So when you create a short film, you are under no reasonable circumstance expecting someone to take inspiration and blow up a convenience store, right? That'd be unreasonable. But my question is a little bit more pointed to you, and it's if you knew that a particular sentence, let's say you could like speak the words and the words would cause someone to go out and molest a child, right? Do you think that speaking those words would be something that you shouldn't do? Or do you believe that, again, because it's a consequence outside of the production of the words themselves, that it is then justified?
If I knew,
Yeah.
and is there any other reason I want to, like,
I
is there a
mean,
reason I feel like I need to say those words? Like, I guess I
yeah,
would. I personally wouldn't say them, but
you
the
personally
question
wouldn't.
is, would I bear the responsibility if I did anyway?
Mhm.
I guess so, but I just don't think that situation is ever. I think
Actually,
I think part of the idea of free speech is that you don't know.
So can I ask you?
Interesting.
Can I ask you? So,
Yeah.
I've been dealing with like weirdo pedophiles on Discord for a very long time. Right? Like I haven't like reported them to the police because they're like going after minors on my server, shit like that, right? And
Bless you, Doobie.
I do what I can, okay?
I know
But
you do.
a while back, I think it was like a couple years ago, I became aware of a book, right? It was like a guidebook, right? That a couple of them were like passing around, or like had, and it was like it's just like instructions for how to like groom a child, basically, right? And you know, here's what you should do. You should. Here's how to talk to them. Here's how to make them feel comfortable. So it was beyond just like erotica about like children. It was like instructions or advocacy that encourage people to go out and do this thing, right?
Yeah.
So is there a line there for you? Like what's they're not just like talking about something like some concept. They're saying that someone should go out and do this thing. You know, they're actively advocating for it.
It's a great real world example. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's wrong. I
Okay.
think it should be protected speech legally, but yeah, I would say that is over the line of like, I'm against that.
I don't even think that should be protected legally. That seems like to get into the area of like incitement. Like,
oh yeah, I mean,
don't-
so
I
Glad
don't-
we
I don't
pinned
think
him
you can have,
down on his line a little bit
Go ahead.
more.
I don't think you can have broad incitement like that. Well, it's not protected legally. If you think that free speech should be restricted so that it is, oh, sorry, it is protected legally. If you think it shouldn't be, then I understand that. But right now, I think you could make a book called How to Groom a Child. I don't know anybody will sell it, but it's not a crime to write it.
yeah, I mean, I'm not saying, I wasn't saying descriptively. I was saying prescriptively. It should be illegal. Like that sounds like incitement, and it's not about child. I just think anything leading towards like anything that either directly tells people to perform like something we would consider a harmful illegal action.
What about most rap music could fall in, most gangster rap could fall into, this is an instruction manual for XYZ. There's tons of rap songs.
Like what example?
I don't know. There's a lot of 50 Cent songs where he's talking about like how to kill someone's connect so that to price manipulation of street drugs, or
Well, Mr.
love 50
Girl,
Cent.
how to
one
load guns, how to do a drive-by,
Kind
One
I've
thing that
never
you
heard
brought
that
up
in his
earlier
discography.
was
I
like the
love 50
tension
Cent.
between why you might want to say something, right? I asked you like if there was a magic sentence you could speak and it would cause this negative effect. Your first question was, well, why would I want to speak that? And I think what you're ultimately talking about is like the potential moral good that might be on the other side of something. So in regards to like rap music, you might make the argument that like, yes, it may cause negative effects, but also it might cause a lot of good effects. So you have to weigh those sorts of things. Maybe that's what you're getting at.
So what is the good effect of 50 Cent telling us how to cook crack?
I'm not
You've
exactly
never-
sure. I don't know the specific song. I'd have to
What?
see
That's
it.
what I'm asking. Yeah.
April, you bring up something that I think
Cake-
is important,
I think Cake
was something that I asked you
Mobb
directly.
Deep song,
But you can
he
go, Mr. Girl.
describes how to cook crack.
What'd you say?
I think in Cake, the Mobb Deep song,
Mm-hmm.
he describes how to cook crack.
Let me go see.
No, but we can look it up. April, you brought up something that kind of ties back to what I asked you earlier, which is like I believe. Let me just like posit what I believe, and then I'll ask you directly. It was like I believe that all outcomes are possible with speech, which is why I'm more concerned about like this question: how do we alleviate the circumstances that lead to bad outcomes? Right. So even if I were to
It's Lloyd Banks,
say,
not Mobb Deep.
even if I were to say that there was a type of music that incites some type of reaction, I believe that any outcome is possible. Like we saw that example with Woodstock 99, that music clearly had a role in not only the incitement of the crowd, but the incitement of a bad outcome. And then the question is like, how do we alleviate those circumstances? So I guess in terms of like, let's say hypothetically speaking, there was a rapper who was explicit about these very things that we believe to exist in rap music. Then the question I think would be, and I'll ask you this, like, how do we alleviate, well, what are the bad outcomes with that music? And then how do we alleviate the circumstances that could lead to those bad outcomes?
So personally, I would say that in regards to a lot of music, there can't be a policy of explicit censorship to controversial music because it's so hard to prove that there would be bad outcomes and that there are like no real good outcomes. And we don't necessarily want to vest power in the government or in private institutions to, personally, I think, to censor that kind of speech. Because ultimately, we can't be sure that when the government censors speech, they're going to do it in our interest, right? So personally, I would say that as a rule, the government should be very conservative at the very least when it comes to censoring, especially artistic endeavors, because it's so hard to tell in the moment, like whether or not something is going to be, explicitly good or bad, what their outcomes are going to be. So I would say that, like,
I found the song. It's "Creep" by Mobb Deep. I was getting my songs mixed up.
Okay,
Yeah, cock that, aim that, squeeze that, shoot the steel, Cadillac, Coupe de Ville, wood grain on the wheel, cocaine in the pot, baking soda water hot. When the ice cube drop, look at that. That's crack. Do we really need
April,
50 Cent teaching us how to make crack?
April, I don't think you're addressing what I'm
I'm
saying
gonna address you.
directly.
Don't worry.
I'm in agreement
What's
with
the-
you. I'm
what's the
in agreement
benefit
with
of
you,
that?
by the way. But one of the things I'm particularly talking about is, like, we understand, I guess we're both in agreement, that the government shouldn't overtly target the bad outcomes because that's going to lead to different levels of limitation. But maybe there's a way, and then we can maybe go back and forth on this. Maybe there's a way that the government can work towards alleviating the circumstances that could lead to those outcomes. For example, if we believe that, I'll give like one example, and then maybe this will like help really encapsulate what I'm talking about, because obviously there's people watching and apparently they all think I'm pedantic. But like under the COVID-19 landscape that we're dealing with, there is a lot of parents who are very adamant and aggressive about going to school board meetings, going to the school officials, not only to defy whether it be mask mandates or different types of social distancing guidelines, but also to go to the political institutions, in this case school boards, to directly protest these things. And that, I think, is a bad outcome, because what ends up happening, what has happened, is that parents are getting arrested, people are getting assaulted, death threats are getting sent to government officials. And these are all things that we don't want. So for me, alleviating a circumstance is trying to dissect and really dissect what is going on, like what is the actual thing that parents, politicians, and the like are protesting within mask mandates, and how do we alleviate those concerns as they pertain to masks?
I mean,
does that make sense?
In this very specific scenario, I'm not a fan of mask mandates. I don't think there's a lot of good evidence to suggest that they're effective, especially just because, like, you're not mandating people use N95s or N95 masks. And so as long as people are allowed to use like cloth masks or to reuse the same mask over and over, it's not really going to be an effective mandate. And so I think people are like quite legitimate in protesting these things. But if we're talking about like sending death threats to people, obviously that's like not good, or causing like
that's an outcome, right? So I'm talking specifically about like circumstance alleviation. But yeah, sorry, not to cut you off.
So like the question is like, how do we prevent people from like sending death threats when they're upset about things? I'm not sure. I wish I had an answer, because I feel like if I had an answer to that question, like some silver bullet to make people like discuss their ideas more civilly, I would absolutely implement it. But I'm not sure. That seems like a difficult question. The broad, like, lame answer is that, like, well, we should encourage a culture of communication and a culture of people being okay with disagreement to some extent, and a culture of people seeing, aggressive partisanship and tribalism as a negative to avoid. That's like the lame answer, because it's like, okay, well, obviously that'd be good. But as far as like a specific policy implementation that would prevent people from taking their political disagreements or policy disagreements into the realm of actually like attacking people, I'm not exactly sure what like the silver bullet would be.
Yeah, and that's kind of why, like, to cycle all the way back to like what I said in my opening, where like I'm really concerned about circumstance alleviation, because I think what ends up happening is that you get kind of the response that you described, where once we get to like, okay, what are the circumstances, and then we kind of like skip a beat for a second because it's like, wait a minute, yeah, like if we believe that this is a bad thing, then why aren't we why aren't we prioritizing what the circumstances that lead to these things? Like, for example, one thing that I think is true within the people in protest of diversity equity initiatives and culture responsive teaching is that there's a transparency issue and a communication issue between administration and heads of curriculum to teachers, and then teachers to students, and then students to parents. The communication is getting broken down. So something that I'm very happy that districts are doing is holding more sit down sessions with parents, sit down sessions with teachers, sit down sessions with students to really understand like where these sentiments are coming from. Because I believe that the parents who are protesting and arguing with like CRT, COVID-19, safety of women in bathrooms, they all have valid critiques of what's going on in education. But the problem is that they're all functioning on different levels of information. Some of it
Doobie,
is
no one's
misinformation.
here to help you.
Some of it,
You can raise your hand. No one's gonna save you.
I'm
I wanted to
Just
address
jump
what Matt
in,
said.
I know
Doobie. Be
people,
aggressive.
people say I'm like an
it-
ass sometimes, but I'm actually a very nice person. But Joe, you're boring as fuck right now. You're way off topic. We're down that rabbit hole for the fifth time. Please, let's try to stay on topic, okay? We don't need to talk about mask
What-
mandates or how to keep the parents happy or any of that bullshit. We're talking about censorship and the responsibility people have to the damage that their words can do in the real world.
I disagree, Doobie. I think he's
And
on
that has
topic.
nothing to do. That has nothing to
everything
do with
it.
how we
Like,
make parents feel good about what the schools are teaching.
No, because the question is,
misinformation
how do we
and
mitigate the negative effects of speech and people, getting riled up about these topics? How do we mitigate those effects?
What if it's something they should get riled up about?
Well, Joe Lewis is saying that one thing we can do is hold like sit down meetings where people feel really hurt.
About what?
Right? About COVID or mask mandates or bathrooms.
About COVID,
and so
masks,
right?
You think
and so
them feeling heard? You think them feeling heard, right? You hearing them out about their concerns about CRT, but then teaching the CRT anyway, or hearing them out about the mask mandates, but then doing the mask mandate anyway is going to make them feel any better? No, the way that you stop that, right, is you actually, like us, don't do the thing that they don't want you to do. That's how you do it. Right, but if we're not willing to do that, then we need to acknowledge that we're not willing to do that thing, even after hearing them out and wasting their fucking time for hours, right? That we're having these meetings.
I don't
We
think
need to acknowledge,
that's his
hey,
position.
you're going to come in here, you're going to talk at us. We're going to acknowledge that you talked at us, and we're going to do what we want to do anyway, because fuck you, right? That's not really helping anybody. I think that's not really dealing with the topic at hand, which is what responsibility do people have for the speech and the damage that the speech can do.
All right, bam.
Right.
Yeah.
What damage does the speech have to posit the idea that you should not get a vaccination to go to schools?
Did I look up that 50 Cent lyric for nothing?
No, I did want to address it. Actually, I was just trying to cut off their like in between.
You just have to jump in. It's
we can circle.
Well, I mean, no, it's fine.
We can table it for later, April.
I didn't want to because I don't want to feel like I can't acknowledge it directly. Like it's not actually like if you look at the song itself, the song isn't like glorifying and telling people to do that. If anything, it's the exact opposite. Like the song is about how awful the conditions are in these communities and how you shouldn't want to be here. It's like literally what's a few other lyrics, because I didn't even realize I remember the song until I started looking at it. Don't go and get comfortable. Don't know what he told you. It ain't sweet around here, and I don't care what he told you. Ain't sweet around here.
That's Lloyd Banks.
Yes, but I'm saying it's a part of the same song. They're both the concept they're dealing with. It like you have to be really rough and tumble to exist in the neighborhoods and communities that they're talking about, and you don't want to be here.
50 Cent does not glorify his drug dealing days and his music.
50 Cent, all 50 Cent talks about now is how much money he has. Like literally, the original G Unit, yeah, 50 Cent was shot 9 times. No, it's not like I don't think he's it's something he's proud of. I think it's something that it's a descriptive reality of the situation he came from, and he's proud he overcame it.
Stunt, I get on some shit. Different day, different bitch. Old hoodie, new kicks.
Right,
Oldsmobile, fuck that. No rim, hubcaps. Keep my eyes open. Well, I can't say this line, but
yeah, it's all under this overall idea of how distraught and bad the situation these people are coming from, and this is what they've done to survive it.
Wait, but I don't think a lot of times they're presenting it.
I don't think he's talking about how bad things are there.
Yeah,
the same argument you can make.
A lot of these things are they're glorified.
Like if 50 Cent came out, he's like, "Yeah, I was glorifying crack dealing." You'd be like, "Well, then I think that should be banned."
Like, why are we acting like
and I think
rap music that does?
We're not acting
things?
like it's just rap
music
music
does this. Yeah, so
I'm not even saying it's just rap music. I'm saying that he's
we're just talking about rap music right now.
I had an
sure.
inkling that you'd be more likely to defend rap music than you would be to defend Lolita, and you are.
True.
And now you're whataboutisming it, but
I'm not whataboutisming it. I'm answering you directly.
Well, okay, I'm asking you directly. If 50 Cent said, "Yes, I made this song because I want people to deal drugs. I want them to kill people. I want them to do crack." And that's what. Do you think it should be illegal? Do you think Do you think the cops?
Yeah, I think that would be considered incitement if that's your intention.
So even if it was the same song, you're saying that 50 Cent.
Because I'm disagreeing with your context.
He said, "I know." I'm saying if 50 Cent came out and said that song "Creep," yeah, I made that because I want people to deal drugs. Do you think the police should come and be like, "Well, Mr. Cent, you're under arrest for the crime of incitement"?
Well, just because a lot of things are illegal doesn't mean the response to something illegal is always arrest. Speeding is illegal, but that doesn't mean every speeding leads to an arrest.
But you think there
should get a ticket?
I'm saying that if we know that if you're doing something to incite violence, I'm answering your question. I can't be more directly than I'm doing.
Yes, it's a yes or no question.
No, there's not. No, they're not. Only dumb people say it's a yes or no question. Only dumb people say that because they don't want context to the answer.
You to be dumb with me. If 50 Cent,
I refuse. I'm not calling. I'm not. Well, I guess I am calling you dumb. I'm not going to run from that.
Yes, no, and you're too smart to answer this question. And if you want to choose that one, that's fine. If 50 Cent said unequivocally, "I made that song "Creep" because I want people to deal drugs, smack bitches."
I already answered this. And I'm trying to.
Do you think he should get a ticket or any other punishment from the
government? There should be punishment if you're inciting violence. Yes. But that's not. But you see how that's useless because we have no context involved with that. But that's what you want. You wanted a contextualist.
What context you need to shove into that to like explain your answer?
I mean, because all that's going to do is you're going to apply some other example, and you're going to say, well, why doesn't it some other like example that had some key difference?
Actually just finding out.
Hold on 1 second. Let me finish what I'm saying. Because hold on 1 second. Hold on 1 second. I'm not talking to you. I'm saying I'm addressing Doobie right now because Doobie said why is context necessary? Context is necessary because context is
boring.
Okay, well, I'm sorry. Context is necessary, Doobie, because whenever you just say a yes or no to something, someone can throw out another example, and then you might have a different answer, and they're not going to know what the distinction is. But when you use context, you can isolate what the distinctions are, what the specific criteria are that can make one situation different from another. That's why context is important. Context is born is such a weird comment.
Policy you're supporting will disproportionately affect Black people.
It won't because
it probably will.
But it won't.
Well, I mean, can I ask you a question?
But you're saying that glorify violence and crime in their art more than anybody else that I can think of.
Where do you see glorification? I don't.
Wait, hold on. So gang activity, drug use, drug selling, like that's just glorified all the time in gangster rap. Not even just gangster rap, like just rap in general.
People say gangster rap is so weird. Like gangster rap isn't even like.
If you want to pretend that gangster rap isn't like a rap genre, we can pretend it's not. Okay,
we're not Ice-T in the '80s. Gangster rap is not even like a genre.
But you think Ice-T in the '80s, especially at the height of the drug epidemic, where a lot of these the communities were dealing with like gangs and drug dealers tearing their communities apart. You think that Ice-T making music glorifying that shit back then, he probably should have been arrested or put in prison or something, right? Or has some kind of legal consequence. Has some kind of legal consequence for what he was doing.
What responsibility does the label have to that for putting that out? if they
Wait,
know that this
but
might
Bam
I
cause
mean,
just
no
said
one
that-
actually believes
Bam
this
just
on
said-
this panel.
harm.
No one
Bam
believes
just
that
said he
like
does.
art should be censored in this way.
Wait,
Yeah.
but
Right?
Bam just said that he does. He just
But
said
I
that there should
No.
be some kind of
No, I
consequence.
didn't. I
He
said
said
nothing
that
about.
in the scenario where you could explicitly prove that the rapper released the song with the intention to harm people,
'Cause he
and it
said
did harm people, and you can draw a one-to-one comparison.
No,
Then it would be
no,
justified.
not
Talking
and
about
it did harm
inciting.
people. That was not the hypothetical. The
we're not-
hypothetical was he said he did it for the purpose of getting people to smack bitches and cook crack and shoot people. And Bam said, yes, that should be a crime, and that is a Karen stance.
Okay.
You
Well, I
see how?
think
You see how now we have no
Bam.
context.
if we
Bam,
can
yeah.
strongman Bam's position, I think you
It
would
wouldn't need to be
also
strongmanned if I
add
could've
the
added
qualification that you must be able to prove that there was actually a real crime that was directly inspired by that intention.
That is not the question I asked him.
I
That's
know,
just a
but I
different
think that's what he
hypothetical
would.
that would make his answer make more sense. But that's not what he said. I wanted to
No,
to
you
drill
wouldn't let
down-
me say anything. That's the point. You only said a yes or a no because you said you didn't want context, and I'm showing you how stupid that
That's
was now.
Adding extra shit to the hypothetical to change it is not
It's
content.
not adding.
It's
Okay.
my
Yeah,
hypothetical.
adding.
It's my
Well, Bam,
world
can
that
you-
you're- that you're living in when you're answering this question. So I can make up whatever I want, and then if you're going along with the hypothetical, you just have to answer.
Yeah, Bam, can you readdress the hypothetical, but understanding that the hypothetical did not include an actual harm perpetrated by someone? It's just in the hypothetical, he said that it was intended to cause people to smack bitches and deal drugs and so on.
I
Do you think that
I think
should be
I think
punished?
that no, I think there should still be consequences. Yes, I don't think the punishment is prison. I think that like I
Yes,
think that
legal
there can
con-
still
okay,
be.
that's-
I think
that was
that I
the
think
first
there.
question. You
I'm
think
trying
any
to tell you
legal
what those types of consequences.
Yes, yes. The answer is yes.
Okay, fine.
April,
You
you
see,
said yes.
you say we know nothing
Okay.
now. We're not any more
We
closer
know
to
we
what
know
I
you want
actually believe.
consequences. You want
No,
legal
yeah, we
consequences.
do understand your position better now.
April,
But you
your
don't.
answer is
That's what I'm
perfect,
saying.
and
You have no idea what I believe.
it. So we had to get you to say it again just so April could.
Because legal
wrap her
consequences
mind
could just
around
be
what
that song isn't played on radio, and you would say, "Oh, that doesn't count as legal consequences," but you don't know that because I not allowed to give any
It does.
context.
That's censorship. That's a legal consequence.
Bam, can I pick your brain on something?
So
Yeah, you're familiar with Woodstock 99, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So like in the context of Woodstock 99, Limp Bizkit was explicitly told to stop for the crowd to calm down.
Mm.
In that, he chose not to do that and played break stuff right after he was told that. And it's on film. So do you think that Limp Bizkit is responsible for the actions that happened during his set or during their set, I should say?
Yeah, he has a level of responsibility, and
Okay.
I think it would be dishonest to say like it has nothing to do with him. Like obviously he plays a part in it, but that like I said the responsibility the response should be also like the punishment should fit the crime. Again, it doesn't mean
Sure.
anyone's thrown in prison. It doesn't mean anyone's like yeah.
What do you mean?
Sure,
What do you
well-
mean? No, go ahead,
Oh,
Joe.
now you want context? Text? No,
Well,
I'm
the
not giving you
punish-
context
the
now.
punishment should fit the crime. Like if
You don't
there's a
deserve
riot,
context.
Like
Well,
what punishment fits a crime of like inciting a riot? Like,
Doopy doesn't want
multiple
context.
women
probably
multiple
prison
women-
time. Honestly,
Yeah, I mean, multiple women at Woodstock 99 were sexually assaulted, some of which have never even got their cases resolved. There are multiple examples of acts at the event facilitating that very behavior. And it took a lot of people to convince acts to say, like, hey, like, you have to tone down what you're saying when you're on stage talking to the crowd. The reason why I brought up the Olympistic example is because I think that might be the clearest example that comes to mind, at least for me, about like where I think artists do have a level of responsibility for the actions that they do. Like when you are on a
MWA
stage,
too, with like
yeah. I mean, they were charged for inciting a riot. I think it was at Madison Square, like, and they got and I think it even got like cut short. Like it's very clear that like the actions and again like some companies do different things, right? Obviously, we're like dealing with Travis Scott right now and his responsibility for what happened at his event. So like I think we're all in agreement that artists do have a level of responsibility, especially if you can reasonably assume that their actions led to whatever harm you might deem intolerable. And like in terms of Woodstock 99, sexual assault, and people literally dying, or even the Travis Scott situation of people literally dying, where I think we understand that artists do have responsibility for the label and what they say.
So if that's the case, like why not extend that a little further? So there are lots of artists who glorify not just drug dealing, but drug use.
The glorifying
violence,
isn't necessarily incitement.
Hold on, violence. They glorify like the gang that they happen to be in, the set that they happen to be part of, right? And I think you could probably find some connection.
I've given the distinction before you even finish this question. It's not incitement.
Just don't interrupt. Control your impulses.
Do it anyways.
Control your impulses for like 10 more seconds. It's okay. Right? So you could probably find some connection, right? We could probably find some connection between young people who get into that lifestyle and listening to that music that glorifies this lifestyle they end up getting into, right? So if you could find that connection, right, and we could demonstrate, right, that the creation of this music, right, with these messages is leading to more people thinking that it's cool to be in a gang and leading to more of these people getting into the gang lifestyle, and with all the bad things that happens to people that get into that, should we then just ban the music?
Number one, this doesn't happen. Number two,
I don't think
glorification.
That's true. I don't think you could just say just flat out it doesn't happen. That's like bullshit. I know that's bullshit. I think
I'm
that's
not calling
bullshit.
BS because I specifically.
Wait, hold on. I forgot. You're the guy who thinks that gangs don't wear like gang colors. So yeah, I forgot.
Yeah, you think that? Like I said, you're the guy that thinks that life works like GTA.
I'm the guy who understands that. Yeah, the Bloods and the Crips have gang colors. Lots of gangs have colors that they wear. Yeah.
Yes, that's not. Again, this isn't the reality of 2022. This isn't how you identify.
I don't think you know what the fuck you're talking about.
Hold on, control your impulse.
Given that you don't know what the fuck you're talking about, I'm not.
Control your impulse.
I am controlling my impulse. I recognize
control yourself, man.
And I'd like to confront you that you don't know what the fuck you're talking about. That's what makes this totally illogical answer you're about to give us make sense because you just don't know what you're talking about.
Can I ask a question?
Hold on. I want to answer his question. It's his very dumb and correct question. It doesn't happen. It doesn't happen because music responds to culture. Like culture doesn't necessarily, it doesn't work the other way around. Culture doesn't respond to music. Like people are going to, especially rap in particular, is a very it comes out of a for the people. It was it was started as an anti-establishment brand, speaking to people talking about the conditions that they come from. So rap music isn't like what's putting people in these positions. People are in these positions and they're talking about the things that they experience. But even if I granted you your point, even like I said, I disagree with it, even if I granted you the point that it was that it happened to lead to whatever consequences you said were happening, glorification is an incitement. And cool. Now you can ask me.
So to be clear, when you say that music doesn't respond to culture, or music responds to culture doesn't like make the culture, whatever.
Yeah.
So you're telling me that all those emo kids that were walking around doing emo shit, in the 90s and early 2000s, right, listening to emo music, right, that with emo bands that dress a certain way, did certain things to let everybody know how emo they are. Telling me the kids that started doing that after listening to this music, becoming fans of this band, that this was just like inherent in them. They didn't like respond to the music and start doing the thing because the artists were doing it and they thought it was cool, so they wanted to look like the artists.
I don't know if that's really culture, but the feeling was already there.
But
the feeling to like wear black makeup and paint your nails black and wear like fucking thick bracelets, that was like inherent in them, and they heard the music and it awakened it or some shit, right? Like, you know how stupid that sounds? Like, come on.
But I don't know, dude. Would you hold the same level of scrutiny to Linkin Park? Do you think that Linkin Park overtly okay?
I'd hold it to every group, right? But so I think that music definitely influences people to behave in certain ways, right?
I want to make sure you understand. I want to make sure you're like addressing my point directly. So, do you think that Linkin Park is responsible for the inclination and the increases of teen suicides in the United States in the 2000s?
Probably. Yeah, there are probably some kids who listen to. Well, I don't know if like Linkin Park.
Crawling in my skin, these wounds they will not heal.
Yeah, but most Linkin Park's music is like not like that, right? Most of Linkin Park's music isn't that. But that song specifically, yeah, I'm sure there was like some teenage girl out there, some teenage boy who are just really depressed about what's going on in their life. And they listen to the song about how it's never going to get.
It's not just that.
About
song.
how it's never. How about please? And listen to the song about how it's
Sure.
never going to get any better. And yeah, they just push them deeper into this hole because they fully identify with that feeling and they decide to kill themselves. Yeah, I'm sure that's a thing. Actually, there's a really famous song called the Hungarian Suicide Song. Beautiful song. It's one of the most beautiful songs I've ever heard in my life. Just like everything about it is beautiful. The lyrics are beautiful, the melody is beautiful, but it's actually banned in a lot of countries because for a long time, when people committed suicide, they were listening to that song. That song was playing on the record player, right? So they ended up banning it in a lot of countries. So I would say that they are somewhat responsible, and that the media, the thing that they created, maybe like fostered environment or created an environment that pushed people deeper into this pit that they're in, and lets them committing suicide. Now, would I say that they're like fully responsible for the suicide and they should be like put in prison or something? No, right? But I think we need to acknowledge that there is some responsibility there, right? That the things you put out into the world don't just like go nowhere and have zero impact. They do impact people, right, in very serious ways. But what I'm saying is like acknowledging that BAM seems to think that there might be some level at which we should like give people legal consequences for that fact. I don't know if I agree with that. And I think MrGirl's perspective is like just no legal consequences, right? Like
if there's like a
Oh no, I was specifically was talking about incitement. You
I have a question. So if you could look at like the riots that occurred with Black Lives Matter, and you could look at political pundits and talk and show that they're lying about, say, Breonna Taylor, saying that she was shot in her bed, or they're lying about like Kyle Rittenhouse, and they're saying that he shot Black people. Does that count like as incitement when you then look at like the millions of dollars in property damage or the people that were killed?
Well, April, this is where I think misinformation and disinformation is important, because like if I believe that misinformation is false and inaccurate information with varying degrees of intentionality, and disinformation is false and accurate information explicitly intended to mislead, if you can prove that these sentiments that these politicians and otherwise explicitly were trying to mislead the public, then I think you have like an argument there. But I think it's hard to discern
I
if
don't
people
know.
were.
I think that even if you're not intentionally doing it, if you're like a politician or if you're a leader, I think you have a responsibility to know what the fuck you're talking about. If you're going to
Politicians lie all the time, though, and we don't
absolutely
know.
They shouldn't lie. But I'm saying even if you think you're telling the truth about the Breonna Taylor killing, and you say some shit that's not true, and it makes people riot, I do think you, as a leader, bear some, I don't know, legal responsibility, but political at least. I think that should be.
I mean,
at
from
least
my
a
perspective,
censure, maybe an impeachment.
it seems like left-wing misinformation causes like an enormous amount of destructive harm. Yet this panel was like started with the premise that like conservative misinformation is overwhelmingly, or just like tends to be more destructive.
I agree with you. I consider myself, pretty left-leaning, but the Kyle Rittenhouse shit was insane. Like, you can't, 99% of liberals, you cannot have a conversation with them about Kyle Rittenhouse without them saying something completely fucking batshit insane or untrue.
It appears to me that the only examples that people posit in terms of misinformation when it comes to the left seems to be specifically within Black Lives Matter and within the sentiments of just broader civil rights in the United States. Is there another example, April, that you have of like overt misinformation of the left that's not Black
There's
Lives
a
Matter?
subreddit that exists right now on Reddit called Herman Cain Award. And it basically celebrates the death of people who died from COVID if they were anti-maskers or anti-vaxxers. I mean, the idea that like mask mandates are this like super effective thing is just not premised on any like real information, especially when it comes to cloth masks. Like whether or not someone died from COVID has like almost no bearing on whether or not they wore like some dirty cloth mask into their grocery store.
To be fair, the Herman Cain Awards isn't just about people wearing mask mandates. It's like people saying that they are anti-vax. They're not going to get the vax, right? Like, and being proud about anti-vax, encouraging other people anti-vax, and then dying from the pandemic. So
I mean, another one would be like how liberals went on and on about Russiagate, right, with Trump, and continually pushed the narrative that there was like collusion. This is happening on like mainstream news media outlets. I mean, we could like run down the list. It happens with basically every issue. It's going to get politicized.
If the president of the United States is being investigated by the FBI for possible coordination with a foreign power, that is a super important, relevant news story. I don't think that reporting on that is pushing a narrative.
Reporting on it is not a problem, but reporting on it as if it's already true is a problem.
Who did that?
I mean, I think you can look at like these, I don't know exactly what they're called, like talk show hosts, right? Like, who are not necessarily the most politically informed, but they're making jokes about how like, as if it's already a done deal. I think that's problematic.
Yes, I think that's fair. I think that, I think it's a big problem that CNN has those infotainment in between Anderson Cooper. 1 second he's making jokes and giving his opinion. Another second he's reporting. I agree that is extremely problematic.
Or calling like ivermectin horse medicine, right? In regards to Joe Rogan. Ivermectin is medicine for humans. It's been given to millions of people worldwide, right? So to call it like horse medicine and to like denounce it as this crazy thing, that's misinformation. You're actively engaging in like assassination of someone's character.
But it's also not generally like it doesn't have
no,
like when people are no, I'm not saying that humans can't use it for things, but I'm saying in relationship to like COVID-19, there's no information showing it to have positive effects, and people are using the horse methods and variation.
I mean,
like
the only
although Joe Rogan wasn't, but
an example that comes to mind of like actual disinformation, like within the left, I think Rachel Maddow is the best example when she overtly advertised that she had Donald Trump's tax returns and then had that story, built up that story, propagated that story. And then we found out that, well, sure, you have a tax return, but you don't have the embodiment of what people on the left were asking for when they were asking for Donald Trump's tax returns. I think it's a better example.
Also a good example.
Okay, and I also think that like when she brought up BLM. This is the last thing. I know you can go. I think that the Kyle Rittenhouse situation was to like I was actually a big, well, it sounds super cringe. I was a big, I fought against the Kyle Rittenhouse narrative. I think that a lot of the way that was handled was generally really irresponsible. But more directly to the Breonna Taylor case, as far as like saying that misinformation led to a level of violence and destruction, I'm going to accept that some portion of that was true. But do you believe that the change in details would have made BLM feel dramatically different about the outcome of the situation?
I mean, the original story was that she was shot in her bed.
I'm saying, do you think that even the proper narrative, like, do you think that the people who were protesting for Black Lives Matter still wouldn't have had a problem? I'm not saying if you think
they might have an issue, but they wouldn't think that police were marching to somebody's house and shooting her in her bed while she's asleep, or executing Michael Brown in the middle of the street.
Remember,
when reality, like, her boyfriend is firing shots. So I think the difference between like the actual narrative, which is like Knox come to the door, announce themselves, even though they aren't required to by law, and they're shot at, versus the narrative that was I heard, right, initially, was that this woman was shot in her bed just, because cops broke down the door and are violent, bloodthirsty people, right? I think that kind of misinformation is really dangerous, and that is what
you
causes
just did
violence.
was misinformation.
Okay,
no, that's
elaborate.
That's not true. What about what you said was misinformation?
Because you confirmed what you said to be like a hard truth. The reality is, I think there was no confirmation of them knocking and announcing. Yeah. They said as much. There's no like
they did some
neighbors are like that's at best mix.
Whether they announce themselves. That's true.
Okay, so there's some people dispute that. Mm-hmm. And they say what they did.
But I'm saying that I think that's a really key thing to be acknowledged as far as like information, and the second factor being The second factor being like them, that the idea of him like just shooting, like his response, particularly being him shooting in response to like someone breaking into his house.
But April,
And
that's
part of this
important
is
too.
like is trust and authority, right? I mean, the cops say that they did this, right? But we have a long history now, like over just the past like 10 years of these videos of cops saying one thing. We see a video and they're fucking lying, right? They prove themselves to be absolute goddamn liars. So you're saying, well, yeah, the cops said this, and I don't think you're going hard on this, April. But like the cops said that they announced themselves. Other people said they didn't. Like, are we going to believe the authorities because they are the authorities?
Wait, but one of the people. So this was happening in the middle of the night, by the way, right? So lots of people in the building would have been asleep, for the first like shout outs if they did happen. But the guy who was there when the cops got there, he said they did announce themselves once. They knocked more than once. The boyfriend acknowledges that they heard knocking right when they were in bed. So we have acknowledgement they were knocking. The guy that was awake that we know was awake the entire time and was in the hallway saw the cops coming. He says they did announce themselves once, but we also know that they didn't need to announce themselves because this was like a no-knock warrant, if I remember correctly. So they actually did more than they legally had to do, right? So that narrative, I think, is a lot friendlier.
I don't know. Is
or
that
a lot more,
what you said even
a lot
true?
less.
I think you just lied
Yes,
again.
Google it.
The boyfriend acknowledged that he heard them knock.
I'm not
I
sure
think
if
you
the
just lied.
boyfriend did, but there are other witnesses.
Wait, hold on. Wait, this is why he got his gun, right? Because he heard banging at the door.
No, you heard people breaking this out. You said that them knocking and announcing themselves like that. I feel like
you're missing it better if we only use examples where we all basically agree on what the facts are. I feel like this is going to turn into a binder fight, and I don't like binder fights.
This is bullshit. It's important for this topic. Like we're talking about
I think
we're talking about specifically. You cut me off all night. I'm going to power through on this one. Okay. So
okay, go ahead.
We have spent this entire topic talking about how information can lead to certain outcomes that we don't like. So Bam, directly, would you say a circumstance to alleviate this outcome could be police filing police reports and force reports to the best of their ability as soon as possible, probably within 24 hours of the incident?
Absolutely.
Do you think? Okay. Does anybody disagree with that?
I think that's legitimate.
That sounds like a great idea.
So that's an example that I was trying to make, and you guys continue to try to obfuscate this point that we have to start identifying circumstances that can alleviating circumstances. So the circumstance here in question is that it's very clear that the police documentation and the police reporting was shoddy at best. With that led to multiple misinformation that April acknowledged that she did on this panel, that Bam clearly acknowledged. He debunked it and amended it, so he corrected narrative. And April, to the best of her ability, took it on the chin, kept the ball moving. Right, that's a good thing that happened in discourse. However, something that does happen, as we see with COVID-19, is that even being presented with misinformation and even disinformation, the debunking and the amending of this information, it doesn't work for a lot of individuals. And that's something that we.
So I gotta say. So so I don't think what April did was misinformation at all. I think
he just didn't use.
I think Bam, what you were doing was misinformation. But I agree with MrGirl. Maybe we shouldn't be using examples that where everybody doesn't agree about the circumstances.
Because then we gotta fucking hash it out. Like there's stuff that we agree generally it was just a lie, and in broad strokes, the Breonna Taylor story was not true, and then the Kyle Rittenhouse story was not true. And what the truth is, I don't think matters that much. For our purposes, I just think acknowledging that there's a big difference.
Well, no, what the truth is, the truth matters because we're under the assumption that if even in the fairest case scenario, because I'm not going to say best case scenario where the cop did everything right, specifically in the Breonna Taylor case, because that wouldn't be true to know for sure did all these. But in the fairest case scenario of description of the case, I believe that people would still be justifiably upset with how that situation.
Yeah, some people can and should be upset either way, but I think that we agree that the truth is probably significantly less upsetting than the story we all first heard.
I don't know, someone who hasn't committed a crime dying in their house I feel like it's still generally pretty upsetting.
That happened in both stories. In one of the stories, she had no relation to the person they were looking for and was lying in bed and got shot randomly by cops because she's black. And in the other story, she was sort of involved in the case, even though they already had the person in custody. And they did have a warrant for her house. It was not the wrong house, and she was not lying in bed. And the cops did not just shoot for it. So whatever you, I'm sure you agree with parts of what I just said. So I'm just saying, if we can agree in broad strokes that the narrative that went around was more like upsetting and probably went around incendiary, then we can agree there was a break with reality, whatever that break might have been.
So if we can agree to that, and I think we can also agree that a lot of these media organizations and politicians, weeks later, months later, when we had all the facts, right, we knew the original story was incorrect, they were still going around saying that she was murdered in bed, right? And with the Kyle Rittenhouse thing, I think there's a couple of newspapers that printed that, you know, this guy killed white, he killed like black people. So those people, given that kind of misinformation, whether or not they intended to be misinformation, it could be that they're just fucking lazy, right? Given that kind of misinformation could incite or lead to like riots or racial animosity between people, should there be consequences for them?
If you're releasing misinformation, I think that not like I said, intentionally bad misinformation. I think that's just that's bad on your job. Like there's consequences for that already.
Yeah. I mean, should there be consequences?
Well,
yes,
yeah,
but
I
those
think there should be
consequences should come from
political and possibly
individuals.
legal. I think if you are in the government, then and you're talking about this stuff, I don't think your speech should be protected there nearly as much as if you're not. So I think if you are lying from your position of authority, I think I don't know about legal consequences, but political consequences for sure. I think that should be like.
Yeah, I addressed this with Prime's question about those people like if you're in that level, if you're in that position, like I can see in that case people coming from your job. Well, not people coming for it, but you lose your job due to
I think that's
just being irresponsible at your job.
Yeah.
Bam. The
I'm
push back a little bit.
So
what's weird to me is that like this happens all the time. It's just power. Like all we're talking about is just the ability to define phenomena and then make it act in a desired manner. That's all power is. And then the information is adjusted and used however way. This is how like power leads to propaganda. And then within that propaganda, there's going to be omission of information all the time. Like every single politician does this for almost every single thing they do. But again, like I think it's much more productive to like look at the circumstances and try to alleviate them, to lead to these things that we think are bad. Like generally speaking, propaganda is neutral. Like information that's used to promote a political cause or perspective, we do this all the time. We've done this on this panel. We all have different positions and we're trying to push our own propaganda, our own messaging. But at the end of the day, clearly, certain information can lead to misinformation or disinformation based on intent. Like that's kind of why I'm confused about your position, Bam. But we can hash it out at a different time.
No, that's good. Like, I agree with you. I don't have an issue with narratives, and I don't think that anytime someone releases something that like someone else decides like, that doesn't feel contextually like all the way there. I don't think that the response is always going to be firing them. But I'm saying there has to be some threshold of like what we hope, which I think the threshold we have now is honestly more or less decent, at least as far as like national news. Like Fox News has commentators that can say things are incorrect all the time, but like their articles, their information section is generally as close to accurate as possible. And if you can point it out, like, and if you do find something that's like demonstrably incorrect, like they have some level of responsibility of changing that. But that's different from people commentating and like pinning, twisting narratives. Like I think that's
but then the tricky part is like, as we see, if you have politicians, and this is like and again, like I don't know where to start with this, is that when you have misinformation, especially when it's unintentional, where it's just like a piece of something that's generally inaccurate, but it's not at the level of scrutiny and they'd be like, wow, like I can't believe they're saying this. Sometimes that can morph in such a way that can lead to things that we deem undesirable. Like even with ivermectin, like we understand that there is an actual like information about ivermectin towards like individuals. And then there's also the truth about ivermectin as it pertains to animals. Like both of these things are true. But the problem is that the way that, I guess to your point, the way that mass media talks about these things, like they can, again, because it's all about power, like however they choose to navigate this phenomena, however they see fit, they are going to in turn, based on whatever their biases are, like omit certain things, whether it be intentional or otherwise, and that is kind of weird. I don't think there's a way to clearly do this, but I think at the very least companies should have some type of language around misinformation and disinformation. I think that's a perfect start.
The chat, I do acknowledge it on both sides. I actually prefer mainstream media to like social media and all these like third party medias, because I think they're held to a higher standard overall, even though they still suck sometimes. So like, don't believe that I picked Fox News because I'm trying to cook for them.
Yeah, I feel like your position is really inconsistent, to be honest.
It's not.
It seems like it is.
Not though. It's just
even Joe's position seems inconsistent, because if you're saying that,
we're
hey,
allowed to be inconsistent about things. I don't think
yeah,
you would have
I
any issue with that.
I think
All right,
so.
guys.
I'd like it.
I have to go.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Okay.
we can table that.
Well, sure, no problem. I was just about to end this anyway. But to my audience, 1 second, please. To my audience, thank you all for being here. We will continue on for our open walk-on panel. We're not done here, okay? We're going to continue on. We'll have another panel after this, right? Open walk-on panel. Also, members like you just sitting at home may participate, right? But before then, do me a favor, hit that follow button. If you haven't done so yet, hit that follow button right now. Make sure notifications are on so you know I'm going live. It is 6 nights a week, right? Come to this channel, PrimeCayes, PrimeCayes, and hit that follow button, because we're always providing you content. So we want to see you there. I'm going to give an outro to all my individual guests here. I'll start with MrGirl because he has to go first, right? Especially with social and chat also for our social media, before I forget that. But MrGirl, thank you so much for coming through and being a part of this. Did you enjoy your time here?
Sort of. Some parts of it were pretty brutal.
Okay. All right. Oh, well, anyway.
Some parts I liked, but some parts I just feel like I don't know what we're talking about. It drives me insane.
Okay then. All right.
So I appreciate you having me all the same.
Absolutely.
And,
we're happy to have you.
April, it was good to meet you.
Likewise, for sure.
Joe, Bam, good to meet you as well. And Doobie, I'll see you tomorrow.
Hopefully
check out
we can have
Mr.
more
Go.
Wait,
shows.
it's
the day after tomorrow. The day after tomorrow.
Monday. Yeah.
Fuck.
And you've been doing the
I think I
Twitch
told my
thing for
chat.
like a month, and you're missing days already. What the fuck's wrong with you?
I'm out.
Yeah,
He's
Monday.
stressed.
Monday.
Everyone
Monday, I
wants
think
to talk to him.
have a good time. Okay, I'm gonna introduce you to all the nice people in my community. You're gonna hear all the terrible stories about them being Nazis, but I promise it's exaggerated just a little bit.
Nazis?
They're not Nazis. They're very nice people. Some of them are probably Nazis, but not most of them.
Got him excited.
Break from Nazis for now. All right. Well, thank you, Prime. Thank you, everybody.
Have a good one.
I'll
Thank
see
you.
Next time.
Okay. And we'll get to our rest of our guests. So we have our MVP here. We call him Joe Lewis. Joe Lewis, thank you for coming through. This was a rough one, unexpectedly. That was not the plan. I can assure you, Joe, but that's kind of where we ended up. But Joe, you handled it well, I thought. You rolled with the punches. What exactly I would expect from an MVP like you. So Joe Lewis, thanks for coming through.
Yeah, just thanks for having me. I guess like the overall thought is, I guess like the guiding thought is just kind of just setting the floor. A lot of people don't like me in the space. They've made it very clear in public and private that they don't like me. And sometimes when you get these individuals all together in the same space and have conversations about things, clearly it's going to go a little here and there. Obviously, like I addressed my community about the situation on Monday. They made very clear and they addressed me. But obviously people won't see stuff like that, right? They're just going to, and this is one of the biggest problems with Twitch and the bars, right? Is that people will just harken back to the instance that they remember. Like they're not going to see or even hear about like me addressing this with my community. They're not going to see the mods that leave my space and all this other stuff. But I still have to deal with the consequences of that. So it is what it is. But either way, like it's no lost blood, Prime. It happens. You know, same shit, different toilet. But either way, glad to be here nonetheless.
All right, man. And you know, I appreciate it. I got nothing but love
Yeah.
for you, Joe. So, all right. Next we'll go Black American Made. I have contempt for this one. But Black American Made, you know, Black American Made, though, thank you as always. I'm really happy you answered the call. I needed someone to help fill in. And it's like you do that. It's not like you just were standing, you just like sat here. No, you came in and you were swinging, and I expect nothing less from you. So thank you so much, Bam, for being a part of all this.
Yeah, thanks. Like I said, I'm always glad when you invite me on. Yeah, I got to fight with some people. I don't know. It was like the sections that were like really weird, but it was also sections that were like pretty good overall. Anyways, yeah, I'm always looking to do this. Y'all follow me on Twitch, YouTube, Twitter sometimes. I guess if you think I'm a terrorist, a 9/11 terrorist. But yeah, thanks. I'm never good at outros. Thanks.
No, that's no problem. All right. Why don't we go to Doobie next, our Dark Lord and Savior. Doobie, thank you for coming. Thank you for being a part of this. This was, oh man, this was a spirited one. It escalated, and you're the one who escalated it. So I should expect that from our Dark Lord and Savior. Doobie, thank you for being here, and tell a little about yourself.
Yeah, I'm Doobie. I help run the Politics of Run Discord. That's at discord.gg/politics. I actually wanted to do this during the panel, but we kind of went all over the place, and I forgot. It was in my notes. But I wanted to acknowledge, I didn't want to just call out Joe, MrGirl. I wanted to call out myself too, right, for some irresponsible wordplay that I engaged in. So if it's okay, I'll take like 2 minutes to do that right now. Is that okay?
Yeah.
So, what was it? Last weekend or the weekend before? I think the Sunday before this last weekend, or it might have been last Sunday. I honestly can't remember. The weeks are kind of blurred together. Prem, you and I were on a panel that Mad Lab put together, and with MrGirl was there, Anna Furls was there, fucking who else was there? Lots of
Stardust.
Stardust was there. My beautiful friend Stardust, Zonia, my other beautiful friend. Lots of nice people. Hans, great guy.
Politically provoked.
Politically provoked, Brittany. Yeah, it was a total shit show, as can be expected with all of us on the same panel. At the end of the panel, and it wasn't at the end. It was like about 20 minutes to the end of the panel, right? I called out the so just kind of give you like the story for people in chat. I called out initially myself, right? I was like, hey, Prime, why the fuck do you platform me? I convince people not to like democracy sometimes, and I convince people to think porn is bad, and I corrupt your beautiful woman in chat with my frog dick constantly, right? And then we went to Vivian, and then we went to what was the other one? MrGirl. I was going to do MrGirl. No, then I went to Stardust because MrGirl left, right? And then at the end of it, the fourth person was Queen Alexa, who was a person that like I wasn't aware that she was like organizing the panel or involved at all. Oh no, I was aware that she was involved, but not that she was like as involved as she apparently was. So this person was accused of some not so good things. I was very irritated about this. And about 20 minutes to the end of the panel, I brought it up. I was like, hey, how do you guys feel about growing this person's platform? And I feel like I know that I should have thought this through. Like, I still feel totally justified in bringing up the accusations publicly, because they're very, very serious accusations, right? But I brought them up with the understanding that I have, right? So getting this from somebody that I've known for like 5 years, who I trust very much their reading of this and what they say that they've heard from the other person involved. And I brought this up and I threw that at you guys and I threw this at Alexa, not really thinking through when you guys were presented with the public evidence, it wouldn't be as strong as what I know on the back end in my interactions with these people that are unfortunately private. And I feel like doing that, and then afterwards going on to like 2 other streams. Well, and then that I deleted the Discord server, by the way, which I still feel totally justified. But afterwards, I went on like 2 or 3 other streams for like 5-6 hours, maybe like 8 hours, right? Defending this decision, right? And going through all the public evidence with these people. And the public evidence, without all the other context, is really difficult to defend, or it's not very convincing on its own, right? So, and I feel like, given that I do think that the other person involved was a victim in the situation, bringing this up publicly when the public evidence isn't very convincing to most people, I think it's very difficult to bring people on board with that being with this being actually like a bad thing that happened. I think it was really irresponsible to me, because not only did it lead to this person's private issue becoming a public issue again, where they had a ton of problems dealing with it the last time it got public, but it also made it seem like, there's that trope where, hey, sometimes women who accuse other people of rape or sexual assault or sexual harassment, they're liars, right? And you just shouldn't believe them. And I think I contributed to that because the public evidence was just lacking, right? And I did that unintentionally. So I feel like that was really irresponsible of me. So I wanted to call myself out too. So I figured I'd do that now. So that's my closing. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. All right. Thanks so much for Doobie in chat for his Discord server. April, last save you for last. April, I was so happy to have you here. I think you did a bang up job. You crushed it, and you did such a great job of making your points, right? Like, you were very eloquent. I would be ecstatic to have you here in the future, really, on this program or something else that I do. So yeah, April, thank you.
Yeah, for sure. Follow me at Taftaj. It's on the screen. Hard to pronounce and write, but definitely follow me. And thank you so much, PrimeCayes. I definitely had a lot of fun.
Awesome. Hey, this is a random question, right? I saw pictures of you, but you seem what's your ethnicity? What do you
I'm half
go by?
Jewish and like a quarter Swedish, quarter random European.
Okay, all right. You seem like you must be mixed somehow. And you just have an interesting look. That's all. But I was just curious. Thank you so much for that. Anyway, yeah, thank you for being here. We would love to have you back. So to my audience, we're going to continue on with Open Walk On panel after this, as we always do. So stick around for that. Anyone here can join us, but if not, that's okay. Thanks for spending your time, your energy, and your passion with my community. I know they appreciate just as much as I do. Have a good one. Bye.
Take care.